Chapter 13:22. Yun Yeho was afraid that his father would worry about this matter, so he did not bring it up. The main reason was that he was afraid that he would become a burden to his father. Moreover, he was an upright person, so he did not mention it to his father. It was only when he rushed back to his hometown to handle the funeral that he learned about this matter. He had mixed feelings about it. All these years, Yun Yeho had been the one to fulfill his filial piety on his behalf. Now that his younger brother had fallen ill, it was only after a year that he, as his older brother, learned about it for the first time. When he saw his brother lying paralyzed on the bed with his weathered face, he suddenly felt guilty. He had let his younger brother down. Now that the funeral was over, Yun Yeqing had the idea of bringing his brother back to the city to live with him. He wanted to take good care of his younger brother while he was still young. However, he remembered that his house in the city had been sold, and he was now living with Xianxia. Would it be bad for him to bring his younger brother back? Although their house was big, he was afraid of disturbing Xianxia when he thought of how she would have her own family and life in the future. Hence, when Yun Yeqing called to ask for her opinion on this matter, he brought it up to her. Sure, I know that you're kind-hearted and won't reject my request. However, I still hope that you won't force yourself. I haven't been filial to you all these years. Now that your brother is sick, I feel bad and want to bring him back to the city to take care of him. Will you be angry with me? Xianxia was silent for a moment. Yun Yeho. Xianxia had met this man twice when she was young. This time, not long after she had arrived at the Yun residence, Yun Yeho and his family had gone to the city to visit their relatives. Wearing rustic clothes, they brought along local specialties, fruits, and vegetables from their hometown to visit Yun Yeqing's family. At that time, he had even carried her. He was very close to children and especially liked them. Between Xianxia and Xianxia, he especially liked the docile and obedient girl and doted on her. The second time was when Yun Yeqing's business was ruined and his family was in dire straits. Yun Yeho, on the other hand, had come here in secret behind his wife's back. He knew that his brother was having a hard time and that their family was in dire straits. Thus, he secretly gave him tens of thousands of yuan, which he had scrimped and saved, to pay off his brother's debt. How could Yun Yeqing accept it? He rejected it again and again. His brother, on the other hand, was honest and did not say much. He just quietly stuffed the money into the cupboard before he left. Xianxia had a good impression of her brother. He was an honest and upright person. The moment she heard that Yun Yeqing planned to bring her brother over, she was still considering where to settle him down. Xiangti walk? That can't be. It's too inconvenient. Most importantly, given her current occupation, if she were to be followed by the paparazzi, it would definitely disturb her husband, who was planning to move to the city to recuperate. Chapter 13:23. Usually, I'll stay there to take care of him. However, because of this, it might be difficult for me to take care of you. I hope you can understand me. After all, Grandma passed away and your uncle is half paralyzed. It's quite serious. That's why I want to take good care of him. Dad, what are you talking about? Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said helplessly, You earn 5,000 yuan a month. After deducting the rent, how much can you afford? It was not that he had not thought of this problem. He was extremely vexed. He also thought of asking Xianxia for help, but he was too ashamed to do so. However, he heard Xianxia say, How about this? The house we're living in now has 3 floors. If Uncle doesn't mind, we can put him on the 3rd floor. How about it? However, I'm afraid that the little guy will cause a ruckus and affect his rest. If you're worried about this, I can contact someone and buy a small bungalow nearby. The environment will be more elegant and secluded. This way, I'll be close to him and can visit him when necessary. Dad, your health isn't good, so don't go out and work. Stay at home and accompany Uncle. I'll hire a caretaker to take care of him regularly. Who knows, if the care is in place, there might be a glimmer of hope for him to stand again. Don't you think so? This won't do. You're working so hard and taking care of a child. You're already too busy. You can't do this. He did not want her to work too hard and run around for his debt of gratitude. If that was the case, he would rather think of a solution himself. Dad, must you treat me like an outsider? It's not a big deal. Now, I have the ability, and I'm earning more money. My life is no longer like before, when I can't make ends meet. It's time for me to be filial to you. You've raised me for so many years. You deserve this filial piety. That's why you don't have to say such things to me. I know you're thinking for my sake, but I feel very sad when I hear it. Yun Yecheng was stunned. Suddenly, a slightly choked voice came from the other end. Yun Shishir didn't notice this slight movement. Instead, she said, "Besides, Dad, you've been in the city for so many years, while Uncle stayed in the hometown to observe filial piety on your behalf and take care of Grandma. A few years ago, he worked at the construction site for more than 10 years and suffered for most of his life. Moreover, when our family was in dire straits, Uncle always remembered us and thought of us. Taking care of him is also the responsibility of a junior, isn't it?" Sure, I'm already very touched that you think this way. However, you shouldn't take everything on yourself. Let's do it this way. Dad will bring Uncle and the others here. Then, we'll do what I said before and rent a small house for Uncle to rest. We'll talk about the rest later. Dad, this is not appropriate. Yun Shishir sighed. Hey, Shishir, listen to me. I have my reasons for making such arrangements. What is the reason? At the mention of this, Yun Yecheng stammered and refused to say. He only said that it would implicate Yun Shishir. Under Yun Shishir's repeated questioning, he finally spilled the beans. Chapter 1324. When Yun Yeho was young, he relied on his hard work to build a new house in his hometown and married a wife named Xianxia, who gave birth to a pair of daughters. Originally, the days were peaceful and quiet. However, when Yun Yeho got into an accident, there were some subtle changes to his life. His wife did not usually go out to work. Instead, she took care of a few acres of land at home. Usually, she would work in the fields, while her husband would work outside and send money home. Later, when he was working, he was seriously injured and became paralyzed. The pillar of support for the family collapsed, cutting off half of their source of income. As a result, the burden of living fell on his wife. At first, she did not complain. She would go out to farm in the day and come back at night to take care of Yun Yeho and his mother-in-law. However, not long after, Xianxia became unhappy. She had to go out to work in the day and come back at night to take care of her seriously ill mother-in-law and the bedridden Yun Yeho. Gradually, her complaints increased. She was somewhat dissatisfied with Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho. When Yun Yecheng's family was prosperous, he did not do anything to his mother and only sent some money home. However, when they were down and out, Yun Yeho secretly sent money to his father behind her back. Now that Yun Yeho was bedridden, not only did he not inform Yun Yecheng, but the latter also did not come back to visit him. Therefore, she once suggested that they get back the tens of thousands of yuan they had given to Yun Yecheng to ease their hard times. Yun Yeho was unwilling to do so. He said that it was not easy for Yun Yecheng, either. Everything in the city had to be spent, and life was tough. The couple quarreled. From then on, they did not put in as much effort in taking care of Yun Yeho and his mother-in-law and appeared to be very perfunctory. This time, when Yun Yecheng went back to attend his mother's funeral, he learned of this matter and proposed to bring Yun Yeho to the city. When Xianxia heard of this, she also wanted to follow them to the city. Yun Yecheng could not reject her because of his pride, but Yun Yeho was angry when he heard this. He was afraid that dragging his family would burden his father, so he refused to go to the city. Chapter 1325. Yun Yeho was infuriated. Her father hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Don't bother. Your whole family will follow me to the city. I still have some connections, so I can arrange jobs for your two daughters. With that, Xianxia was satisfied. This was also the reason why Yun Yecheng repeatedly said that he could not burden Yun Shishir. With Li Qin in front of him, he had suffered enough. Naturally, he could not let Yun Shishir have another burden. Who knew if she was the second Li Qin? Yun Yecheng did not dare to let Yun Shishir carry another burden. Yun Shishir smiled at his words and said, Dad, you've taught me before that a harmonious family will prosper. Still, since you're worried that I'll be dragged down, I'll respect your opinion. Still, when Uncle comes to the city, even if he doesn't stay with me, I'll at least be in charge of their accommodation. This is also a token of my sincerity. Yun Shishir's words were very pleasing to his ears. With tears in his eyes he lamented, Shishir, the best choice I've ever made in my life is to meet you. Although you're not my biological daughter, I've always treated you as my own in my heart. I know that you're filial and know how to be grateful. At the same time, I hope that you can lead a better life. Your happiness is Dad's greatest wish. Xianxia smiled and comforted him a little more before hanging up the phone. Afterward, she thought that since Yunyeqing was bringing Yunyeho to the city, he would need to consider some accessories. Thus, she decided to head out to purchase some items. The season had changed recently, so she wanted to buy some clothes for the two children and Mu Yaja. Thus, she left a note on the table and left. She hailed a nanny van. When they reached the city center, she put on a pair of sunglasses, a low cap, and a jacket before heading into the shopping center. As a public figure, she had quite a bit of popularity in the public eye. Thus, she had to put more thought into her outfit when she went out. It would be troublesome if the reporters recognized them and distorted the report. After Xianxia confirmed that she didn't recognize her, she went to the children's clothing section. Previously, she had taken Xiaoyichen's measurements. Xiaoyichen matured very early and very quickly. He grew taller and was a head taller than Yu. For a child his age, the clothes he wore for a season would not fit him anymore. Therefore, Xiaoyichen changed his clothes very diligently. Xiaoyichen's skeleton was slightly bigger than Yu's. Perhaps it was because he developed earlier than Yu, but his body had already started to develop. He had broad shoulders, long legs, and a sturdy back. As such, Xianxia specially chose a few suits for Xiaoyichen. She carried a few clothes to the counter to pay for them. Then, she carefully selected a few elegant gentlemen's suits for Yu. Yu was especially suited for this style of clothes. The suits made the little guy look elegant, classy, and especially noble. When she brought a few pieces of clothing to the counter, the salesperson looked at her with a strange gaze. Just as Xianxia took out her wallet, the salesperson at the counter stared at her and asked tentatively, "Are you that Xiaochuan who acted in The Green Apple with Xianxia?" Chapter 13:26. Aya, I can't remember your name, but I know you. I've seen the movie you acted in online. You played the role of Xiaochuan in it, right? Xianxia's lips twitched a few times before she said calmly, "Please help me settle the bill." "Thank you." Oh, okay." The shop assistant quickly packed up the clothes she had bought. However, she suddenly realized that the clothes Xianxia had brought over were children's clothing. She noticed that they were clothes for children around 7 or 8 years old. Why was she buying clothes at the children's clothing section? The shop assistant was suddenly stunned. The internet had advertised that Xianxia was as pure as a young girl and that she was single. She had never been married. Could it be that she had gotten married in secret and had a child? But these clothes were for children around 7 or 8 years old. If she were to convert, she would have had a child at the age of 18. However, according to the law, 18 years old was not the legal age for marriage. Could it be that she had a child out of wedlock? And it was an illegitimate child. The shop assistant cursed silently and was shocked by her own suspicions. This rumor was so explosive. Hence, when Xianxia carried the shopping bags in her hands, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a few shop assistants huddling together and secretly taking out their cell phones. The cameras seemed to be aimed at her. Secretly taking photos? Xianxia's heart sank. She immediately turned around and left in a hurry. Behind her, one of the shop assistants suddenly slapped her forehead and had an epiphany. "Ah, I remember now. Isn't she Xianxia? The one who was rumored to be in a scandal with Xianxia?" "Xianxia. I know her. She just debuted and she's already very popular." Xianxia walked briskly. The shop assistants behind her raised their cell phones and aimed the cameras at her. They were following her because of her fame. She reached out to stop them. "Stop taking photos. Can you stop taking photos?" Xianxia panicked. In the past, she would have her assistant and bodyguard with her. At this time, the bodyguard would appear and stop these people. But now she was alone. Other than hiding and begging pitifully, there was nothing else she could do. She didn't expect that after dressing up like this and wrapping herself up like a dumpling, she would still be recognized. It could only be said that The Green Apple was too popular. The meticulously edited trailer with exquisite scenes and a warm melody. Once those sensational and beautiful scenes were released on the internet, it immediately caused a strong reaction among the young people. The memories of my youth, the warmth in my memories. Gu Xingze and Yun Shishers acting as the winter and summer couple couldn't be any more perfect. Even though Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir are in their 20s, their acting is as authentic as a 16-year-old's. The Green Apple S, Yun Shishers, the Green Apple. But after seeing the trailer, it's beyond everyone's expectations. It seems to be a good feeling. In addition to the official Weibo's promotion and the hype of various famous marketing accounts, Gu Xingze also revealed the highlights of the filming from time to time. Hence, the topic of the Green Apple was constantly trending on the internet. Hence, almost all the young people who frequently surf the internet knew about Yun Shishir. Yun Shishir walked all the way, but the shop assistants were still chasing after her with their cell phones. They madly took photos, recorded videos of her. She was a celebrity. And a big celebrity. Chapter 1327. Actually, given Yun Shishir's current status, it could only be said that she had just become famous. Other than acting in a movie, shooting a few print advertisements, and taking on a MV for an idol drama's original soundtrack, she was widely known by the public due to her high exposure. However, in terms of status, she could not be compared to Han Yuyan and Yang Mi. The reason why she was considered a big star was because Lin Fengtian's personal charisma was too strong. In addition, he had worked with Gu Xingze before. Moreover, the two of them had been involved in scandals outside of filming. In the eyes of the public, Gu Xingze had always been an excellent idol who was insulated from scandals. He rarely had any scandals with female celebrities. Other than some groundless accusations by the media and the female celebrities who had worked with him deliberately buying marketing accounts to create scandals, Gu Xingze could be said to have no scandals at all. Therefore, when Gu Xingze's team did not particularly resist the scandals between him and Yun Shishir, in the eyes of the public, Yun Shishir had almost become the heavenly king sister-in-law candidate. A female celebrity who had worked with Gu Xingze before. She had been very popular recently. Moreover, everyone had their vanity. If they could post a photo with a celebrity on their WeChat moments, wouldn't they be in the limelight? Yun Shishir, can you take a photo with me? Yun Shishir, are you really together with Gu Xingze? That's impossible, right? They can't be together. I've seen the trailer of The Green Apple. Actually, when the two of them stand together, they look very compatible. If she is together with Gu Xingze, I definitely won't be disgusted. Yun Shishir, can you take a photo with us? The voices behind her were still chasing her relentlessly. Yun Shishir turned around and glanced. She did not know when, but the number of employees behind her had increased from 2 to 3. Many of them were passers-by who were shopping in the mall. However, when they heard a loud voice, they knew that a big star had arrived. When they heard that it was Yun Shishir, who had been involved in a scandal with Gu Xingze not long ago, they all chased after her out of admiration. It was a rare opportunity to be in close contact with idols and celebrities. In addition, many people were curious about the relationship between Yun Shishir and Gu Xingze. They wanted to find out more about it. Unknowingly, the number of people following her increased. Yun Shishir was like a headless fly bumping about in the huge shopping mall. She rarely came to shopping malls. After becoming a public figure, she had fewer opportunities to shop and could only shop online. However, when she shopped online, the things she bought were always not to her liking. That was why she had the idea of shopping today. The mall was so big, and there were so many twists and turns. She was not careful and walked into a dead end. Yun Shishir sucked in a breath of cold air. When she turned around, she found that the road was completely blocked. What should he do? Yun Shishir stood helplessly on the spot. She was so nervous that she broke out in cold sweat. She didn't know what to do. She immediately called Mu Shi and informed her of her current location in a hushed voice, asking her to hurry over to put out the fire. Mu Shi said that she would be there in 10 minutes. However, distant water could not put out a nearby fire. What should she do now? Yun Shishir was at a loss for a moment. Yun Shishir, I'm your little fan. Can I take a photo with you? A passerby asked excitedly. Yun Shishir licked her dry lips. Inside, she cursed, fan? How can you be a fan? Chapter 1328. Her movie had yet to be released, her print ads had yet to be released on a large scale, and her music video had yet to be released. At most, it would be hyped up on the internet. Where did her fans come from? At most, they were fans of her looks. However, Xianxia was self-aware. She knew very well that she was not a big shot to the extent that she would have fans no matter where she went on the streets. She could be considered a fan. Usually, when a fan made such a request, as a celebrity, she would ignore it. Unless there were complete protection measures and bodyguards at the scene, only then would she be able to satisfy the fan's request appropriately. Even so, she could not get too close to the fan. This was what Xianxia had warned her. Because the entire team was planning a publicity stunt for her, they planned to tie her and Xianxia together to increase her popularity. After all, in the entertainment industry, where the new and the old were replaced with each passing day, only the newcomers would be happy, but not the old ones. If there were no topics to talk about, they would be outdated very quickly. Xianxia was currently in a slack period. She was a newcomer who had just debuted and did not have a lot of work yet. Other than some entertainment programs, she had not released any other works yet. Hence, the team hoped that during this period of slack, they could stabilize her popularity. Hence, they tied her and Xianxia together for publicity purposes. With Xianxia's high popularity and Xianxia's natural ability to be on the hot search list, there was naturally no need to worry about the topic when the two of them were tied together. As far as management companies were concerned, artists were more like commodities to them. If they wanted this product to gain more market share, they would rack their brains to plan, package, and promote the product. Now that Huan Yu was promoting Xianxia, it was more the intention of the entertainment director, Ji Lin. Ji Lin was very optimistic about Xianxia's future, so he did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to package her. However, what was disadvantageous for her was that tying her to Xianxia for publicity purposes would definitely attract extreme protests and dissatisfaction from some of Xianxia's fans. Long before this, Xianxia had already received razor blades sent to the company by Xianxia's die-hard fans. It wasn't just once. It was a very frequent occurrence. When she opened the letters sent by fans, 80% of them were clamoring for Xianxia to get out of showbiz. However, the unfavorable situation for her was far more than that. Some fans even sent private messages to insult Xianxia, saying that she was a scheming B*TCH and a white lotus who would resort to any means to create hype in order to climb up the social ladder. She was so shameless that she even used Xianxia to create hype. This was something that Xianxia's fans could not tolerate. There were even netizens slandering her, saying that Xianxia must have a very scary background. She must have a sugar daddy behind her, and perhaps even more than one. The financier behind her must be very powerful, so much so that the high-quality idol, who had always been untainted and insulated from scandals, was actually, willingly, tied up with her for hype. In the eyes of these fans, there was no way that Xianxia was willing. He was so arrogant and aloof, so how could he lower himself and cooperate with a newcomer to create hype? It must be that Xianxia's backer was too powerful, so she maliciously oppressed, exploited, and made use of him. These voices with ulterior motives spread like wildfire online. Hence, Xianxia repeatedly warned Xianxia not to go out alone. If she met Xianxia's extreme fans, he was afraid that she would be hurt. Chapter 1329. In the past, there was also a new starlet who had just debuted. She was pretty and had collaborated with Xianxia in an idol drama. She acted as a scheming second female lead. Just like Xianxia's team, this starlet's team wanted to use Xianxia's popularity to create hype. Xianxia's team naturally wouldn't allow Xianxia's popularity to be used by them. Hence, they bought their own marketing accounts and started to create hype with some verified accounts on Weibo. They spread some groundless gossip on the set on the internet to create an ambiguous feeling between the two of them. The starlet would also post some ambiguous content on Weibo from time to time to make people's imaginations run wild. However, her team took a wrong step. The idol drama that Xiaohua acted in did not have a good character setting. Not only was she the second female lead, but in the drama, this character was sinister and vicious. She was very shrewd and always made things difficult for the male lead and female lead. It was very unflattering. Moreover, the audience liked the couple very much. Hence, the impression of the characters in the drama was brought to reality. They were especially disgusted and resistant to the starlet. In addition, she used Xianxia's popularity to create hype. This caused Xianxia's team to be unhappy. Xianxia's studio quickly released an announcement to clarify the scandal. They also accused the starlet of not having professional ethics and creating hype for herself. This caused a huge impact on Xianxia's acting career. As a result, The public was even more disgusted with the starlet. At a press conference, an extreme fan entered the venue and shook hands with a celebrity at close range. The fan took out a bottle of sulfuric acid and splashed it directly on her face. She cursed angrily, "Shameless B****, go to hell." Then, she took out a small knife and stabbed her ruthlessly. She stabbed her a total of 15 times and her body was covered in blood. She was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Fortunately, the stab didn't hit any vital parts. However, the fatal part was the sulfuric acid that was splashed on her face. The starlet opened her mouth and screamed in fear. The sulfuric acid entered her mouth and burned her throat. Her face was disfigured. It was a horrible sight. After that, she left the entertainment industry and disappeared without a trace. However, this incident caused quite a stir in the entertainment industry at the time. Many celebrities who had taken advantage of Gu Xingzia's popularity felt insecure. From then on, very few female celebrities dared to be associated with Gu Xingzia in a scandal. Because of this, you would never be able to tell who had good intentions and who had bad intentions from so many people. Therefore, Qin Zhou repeatedly warned her not to get too close to the fans. Xianxia hesitated, but still compromised and nodded. When the fans saw that Xianxia actually agreed to take a photo together, she was so excited that she rushed forward with her mobile phone to take a photo with her. As soon as she stepped forward, the others also rushed forward and surrounded Xianxia, constantly throwing out questions that were even sharper and more vicious than those of the media reporters. "Xianxia, are you really together with Gu Xingzia? Do you like Gu Xingzia? I read the gossip reports that you and Gu Xingzia are secretly dating. Is that true? If you are really together, why are you hiding it? You like Gu Xingzia, but does Gu Xingzia like you? Did you throw yourself at him when you were in a scandal with Gu Xingzia?" Someone in the crowd suddenly made a malicious guess. Chapter 1330. Everyone fell silent for a moment. Those sinister, suspicious and curious gazes fell on her one after another, all of them carrying deep meanings. That person persisted and asked, "If you really like Xingzia, then so be it. But I think you obviously see that he is very popular and is a king. You just debuted and don't have any popularity, so you want to use Gu Xingzia to create hype and bask in his light and popularity, right?" Xianxia was stunned and at a loss for words. She didn't know how to respond to these unkind and malicious questions. It would only make things worse. Moreover, her team did seem to be planning to create hype. That was true. However, it wasn't her studio's intention to create a scandal with Gu Xingzia. Gu Xingzia's team also had this idea. After all, in the entertainment industry, newcomers were constantly debuting. Many of them relied on their unique looks. Although they didn't have many works, they gradually accumulated some popularity by participating in reality shows. Before this, Gu Xingzia had never tried reality shows. In addition, in The Green Apple, Gu Xingzia and Xianxia acted as the classic Dongxia couple, which was the nation's first love. Therefore, both studios reached an agreement. However, in the entertainment industry, there were so many things that were beyond one's control. There was clearly so much unkind public opinion being forced on her, but she couldn't deny it or explain it. On the contrary, public opinion was a better weapon for her to become famous. Xianxia bit her lower lip and avoided answering the question. In her silence, a female student who looked like a passerby was curious and muttered, "Is she Xianxia? Why can't I tell?" As soon as she finished speaking, Xianxia saw her rush forward and reach out to take off her cap and sunglasses. When her exquisite face was exposed in front of everyone, there was an uproar. Xianxia was secretly shocked and instinctively raised her arm to block it. "Wow! It's really Xianxia in person. I think she looks better in person than on TV." "I don't think so. I always felt that she was just passable. How should I put it? In the trailer of The Green Apple, the character she played was so pure and beautiful, but look at her in person. She even had a seductive aura about her. She looks like the reincarnation of a vixen. She's definitely a vixen. Otherwise, how could Xianxia be so obsessed with her?" The scandal has been hyped up for so long, but Xianxia hasn't stepped forward to clarify it. Could it be that they're together? How is that possible? Why would Gu Xingzia fall for her? He's not famous, and we don't even know if he has a clean background. Who knows? The crowd surrounded her and pointed at her, discussing animatedly. Xianxia's hands hung weakly by her side. She lowered her head and looked lonely. Young Master Gong, there seems to be some movement over there. When Gong Jia passed by a corner of the mall, his accompanying assistant whispered to him. He came to this shopping mall today because Laji Holdings' largest flagship store was in this mall. Hence, he was here to check on the company, which had been in poor health a few years ago, and to see how Yun Tianyu was doing now. However, when he passed by the children's clothing cabinet, Gong Jie followed the sound and saw a crowd not far away. Usually at this time, he would not pay attention to such a disturbing scene. Chapter 1331. When his gaze finally landed on Yun Shusher's fair and delicate face, his originally cold gaze instantly turned fiery hot. It's her. The woman he saw in the poster in Yun Tianyu's office that day. How could it be her? Gong Jie could not help but walk closer to her. Compared to her image in the poster, she was thinner and taller. Her legs, in particular, were slender and shapely. Her eyes were enchanting and beautiful but, at the same time, contained a pure charm. Her brows were gentle and sweet. That face slowly overlapped with the bright and gentle smile in his memory. At that moment, Gong Jie could not help but hold his breath. Similar, too similar. Sure. Gong Jie's eyes widened abruptly as he stared fixedly at her face. After repeatedly comparing her to the girl's voice and appearance in his memory, his eyes seemed to have confirmed his suspicions. Ecstasy surged in his eyes as he dashed toward her. On the other side, Yun Shusher was still surrounded by the crowd with no way out. She looked left and right and surveyed the crowd. However, wherever she looked, there were unfriendly, suspicious, and contemptuous looks. Perhaps, some of them had good intentions. However, some of them had undisguised malice on their faces. There were even some who were recording with their phones. God knew what she would say if it was maliciously intercepted and rearranged. She did not know how it would be distorted. Yun Shusher, say something. Answer us. Are you trying to ride on Gu Xing's popularity to get ahead? Are you using him to create a scandal? Are you trying to use the superstar scandal to get ahead? Yun Shusher. You are very good-looking and beautiful. You have good acting skills too. Why must you use such means to become famous? That's right. Is there no cleaner idol in the entertainment industry? Can't you compete fairly with your capabilities? Why must you use such despicable means to climb up the ranks? Don't trample on Gu Xing's reputation, okay? Gu Xingzi was able to get to where he was today and secure his position for so many years because of his own capabilities. His fame is earned through his own efforts. In my heart, he is a high-quality idol, so can you please leave him? Don't tarnish him. As soon as this person finished speaking, someone immediately chimed in. That's right. Leave Xingzi. Please leave Xianxia. If you must use such a despicable method to create hype, then please get out of the entertainment industry, okay? Everyone's voices buzzed in her ears like mosquitoes and flies. Yun Shusher lowered her head expressionlessly. She did not know when this farce would end. However, at this moment, a tall and slender figure suddenly rushed into the crowd. Gong Jie reached out and pushed the crowd aside. His actions were so urgent and domineering until he stood in front of Yun Shusher. Gong Jie's fingers trembled as he held her face. His nervous gaze fell on her face as he carefully sized her up. Then, he suddenly hugged her tightly in his arms. Shusher, you're still alive. His voice was deep and hoarse. He hugged her so tightly that it was as if he wanted to merge her into his flesh and blood. Chapter 1332. Yun Shusher was stunned. Her mind, which was already in a mess, was disconnected from the sudden situation. She could not connect the dots. Before she could see clearly who had rushed into the crowd, she was held tightly in the arms of a man, unable to move. She thought it was a fan and struggled subconsciously. Let go of me. Shusher. Who are you? She flew into a rage out of humiliation and pushed him away with all her might, only to realize to her chagrin that this man was simply too strong. No matter how hard she tried and how hard she struggled, the man in front of her remained in this position and did not budge an inch. What was going on? Everyone was shocked and could not come back to their senses. Earlier, when Gong Jie had rushed into the crowd, everyone had immediately noticed this man. It was not because of anything else, but because he was too outstanding. His tall and straight figure was a full shoulder taller than Yun Shusher. Yun Shusher was also considered tall and slender, but in front of him, she could only barely reach his chest. The man stood tall. His well-ironed white suit wrapped around his muscular body, as well as his long, straight legs. A black trench coat was draped over his shoulders, reaching down to his knees. He exuded a seductive beauty in uniform. Handsome without waves. It was weird to describe a man as seductive, but on this man, it did not feel out of place. He was too beautiful. His neat silver hair fell to his ears. His facial features were like those of an ancient sculpture. His features were well-defined, deep, and exquisite. He was noble and handsome. A pair of deep and mesmerizing eyes. His eyelashes were thick and curled, revealing a cynical and devilish aura. This devilish aura was insufferably arrogant, flamboyant, and unrestrained. He was like an overlord who dominated the world, extremely cold. However, at this moment, when he hugged Xianxia deeply, there was an indescribable tenderness in his eyes. As gentle as jade. The onlookers could not help but be shocked. Her first reaction was, could this be another reality show? Or, was this an idol drama? Hence, the crowd looked back nervously and excitedly to see if there was a hidden camera in a corner of the mall. They couldn't be blamed for suspecting that they were filming an idol drama. The woman in front of them was as beautiful as jade, and the man was elegant and handsome. When they stood together, they looked like an eye-catching painting. Is this a drama? I also feel like it's a drama. Maybe it's a reality show. Who is this man? How come I've never heard of such a young hunk in the entertainment industry? He's so handsome. He has a completely different style from the popular young hunks recently. He's so tall and handsome. I really like this one. What's this man's name? He's so handsome, even more than Xianxia. That's strange. I've never seen him before. With a face like this, it's hard not to be read. What's his name? Is he a celebrity who just debuted? I'm almost mesmerized by him. Oh my God, look at his hands. They're so long and beautiful. His eyelashes are also very thick. If he were to look at me, my heart would probably melt. Chapter 1333. Everyone was mesmerized by Gong Jie's cool beauty and couldn't extricate themselves. Many people took out their phones and recorded this scene. They uploaded it to Weibo and curiously asked the netizens about this man's name. However, at this moment, in Gong Jie's eyes, the vast world had lost its color. In his eyes, he could only see Xianxia. Everyone else was like air. They didn't exist. Xianxia. Gong Jie gently whispered her name. He hugged her even tighter and refused to let go. He was afraid. He was afraid that if he accidentally let go, she would struggle out of his arms. All of this would be like those recurring nightmares that would shatter. He was even more afraid that if he let go again, he wouldn't know how long he would lose her again. He had searched for her for so long. Everyone told him that she was dead and no longer existed in this world. He should have given up, but he still held on to that little bit of stubbornness until now. However, fate allowed him to meet her again. He found her, so no matter what, he couldn't let go of her. 15 years ago, he had lost her once and they had been separated for 15 years. This time, he definitely couldn't let go. If he could, he really wanted to hug her like this. Time would stop at this moment and not move forward. He wanted this hug that he had lost for 15 years to last a little longer. Just a little longer. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat when she heard him call her name. In an instant, her body became as stiff as a rock. She didn't know who the man in front of her was, but she didn't know why, but when he called her nickname, Xianxia, he muttered, his voice was incomparably hoarse and deep. It was filled with the fragility and sadness of a foam board. At the same time, it was mixed with the joy and emotion of a reunion after a long separation. For a moment, she seemed to be infected by these emotions. She couldn't push him away. Subconsciously, she didn't reject his hug. Xianxia. In her memory, a boy who looked similar to her always stuck behind her and was inseparable from her. Xianxia. The boy's clear and tender voice was like a clear spring flowing in a mountain stream, tinkling and pleasing to the ear. The girl turned around and said seriously, "Xiao Jie, call me big sister. Understand? Don't call me that. I like to call your name, Xianxia. Isn't it nice?" The girl sighed helplessly. The boy ran in front of her and gently held her face with his soft little hands. His pair of charming eyes slightly curved, and a bright smile bloomed on his face. Sure. Let's stay together for the rest of our lives, okay? Xiaojie, call me big sister, the girl emphasized weakly. No. Call me big sister. Don't shout. The boy was unconvinced. We were born on the same day. You were only born a few hours earlier than me. Why should I call you sister? Humph, that's unfair. Even if I was born a second earlier than you, I'm still your sister. But you're so stupid and weak. Why don't you call me big brother? I'll protect you for the rest of my life. Xiaojie, if you continue to be like this, I'm going to ignore you. The girl was angry and made a move to leave. The boy hurriedly stopped her and held her hand. Don't. Sure. Play with me. I'm playing alone. It's so boring. His voice was soft and cute. He held her hand and twisted his body to act coquettishly. Chapter 1334. No matter how awkward the boy was, when he raised his head to look at the girl's face, which was pretending to be angry, he finally gave in. He lowered his eyes and glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, he called out bashfully, "Sis." His crisp voice was especially pleasant to the ears. So nice. The girl smiled in satisfaction and guided him patiently. Call me that again. The boy turned to look at her. When he saw the satisfied and bright smile on her face, a hint of shyness flashed across his well-defined eyes. He spoke again in a tender voice. Sis, let's play together, okay? Sure, I finally found you. Gong Jie muttered to himself as he hugged her even tighter. It was so tight that she felt like she was about to suffocate. When she heard his voice, she hesitated for a moment and was secretly puzzled. Why did she feel an inexplicable longing for his embrace? She clearly did not know him. Why did she feel a sense of closeness when they were strangers? She actually did not reject his hug at all. Being hugged so uncontrollably by him, she felt an inexplicable sense of loss and disappointment in her heart. She heard him call her Xianxia. What a familiar tone. However, this situation was too sudden. Her mind went blank for a moment, and she did not know how to react. The people around them were even more confused. Xianxia, may I know if you're filming now? Who is this man? Can anyone explain to me? Gong Jie's assistant broke out in a cold sweat and immediately went up to maintain order. Coincidentally, Wuxia had also rushed over with her men. However, when she saw Xianxia in the arms of a handsome stranger, she was stunned. Thinking that it was a die-hard fan, she immediately ordered the bodyguards to go up and pull the person away. Who was Gong Jie, though? The moment the bodyguard reached out to touch his shoulder, it was as if in the blink of an eye, and he was sent flying out of the crowd. Everyone was shocked again. They started to believe that this was filming. Otherwise, how could there be such a powerful scene in real life? While the Gong Jie was moving, Xianxia raised her head. However, when she saw the facial features of the man standing in front of her, she was shocked again. You! She widened her eyes in disbelief. Her reason and thoughts fiercely clashed, but no matter what, she didn't dare to believe it. The man standing in front of her had eyes that were very similar to hers. His handsome eyes were as deep as the starry sky. His handsome face, sharp facial features, high nose, and thin lips made him look like a sculpture carved by the gods. Every inch of his face was perfect. You! Xianxia was at a loss for words. Gong Jie lowered his head and looked into her eyes. On his usually cold face, there was a rare gentle smile. His smile had always been unruly, arrogant, and insufferably arrogant. However, it was only in front of her that he showed such tenderness that it made people unconsciously lose themselves in him. Many people in the crowd instantly turned into fangirls. He's so handsome when he smiles. I wonder what TV series he's in. If it's broadcasted, I'll definitely watch it till the end. Who is this man? What's his name? I've never heard of him. Can someone tell me? I'm definitely going to eat. Chapter 1335. The reporters, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, hid in a corner and secretly captured this scene. Mysterious man and showbiz's rising star Xianxia's love and hate entanglement? They're entangled in public. Xianxia appears in a shopping mall after becoming famous. Who is the mysterious man beside her? Breaking news. Xianxia's underground relationship surfaces. Mysterious boyfriend appears in a shopping mall with her. The reporters quickly came up with an eye-catching headline. Immediately after, they swarmed forward and chased after Xianxia and Gong Jie. Xianxia, may I know if you know this gentleman? You two look so intimate. What's your relationship with him? Xianxia, is he your boyfriend? How long have you two been dating? Xianxia, there are rumors that you and Xianxia have an ambiguous relationship. What's your relationship with this man? Could he be the rumored sugar daddy behind you? Xiaxia's brain was still in a state of shock. Everything happened so suddenly that she was not prepared for it. Gong Jie's sudden appearance disrupted all her thoughts. That was because when she faced the reporters' cameras and flashing spotlights, she was still in a daze. Her eyes were empty and she forgot to answer for a moment. When Wuxia saw this, she immediately led people to chase away those annoying reporters. Seriously. These paparazzi are as annoying as flies. No matter where he went, he was haunted. For a moment, the scene was chaotic. Gong Jie hugged Xianxia and held her shoulders with his big hands. He wanted to break through the crowd with her in his arms. However, a reckless reporter rushed in front of him and extended a microphone. May I ask? Before he could finish his question, a look of impatience flashed across Gong Jie's face as he coldly said, "Get lost." The reporter was enraged by his disgusting words. Just as he was about to stomp his feet, he heard the crowd exclaim in admiration. Wow! So cool! He's simply bursting with boyfriend power. He looks so good together with Xianxia. The reporter snorted and picked up his camera to take a picture of Xianxia and Gong Jie hugging each other. Unexpectedly, as soon as he raised his wrist, Gong Jie's men rushed forward and knocked the SLR camera in his hand to the ground. Hey! You are very rude. Why did you smash my camera? My camera is very expensive. Before the reporter could protest enough, he was picked up and thrown out of the crowd. Amidst the chaotic crowd, the poor camera was trampled countless times before it was finally on the verge of death. Soon, Gong Jie's men arrived and began to clear the area. Of course, with Gong Jie's neat character, his men were also very efficient. Not only did they confiscate the cameras of all the media reporters and erase the photos that were secretly taken, but even the cameras and mobile phones of the innocent onlookers were also checked. They only let them go after confirming that they had not taken any photos that they should not have. In just 5 minutes, everyone had been cleared out. The scene quieted down in an instant. Wuxia stood at the side, dumbfounded. Gong Jie turned around. The moment he looked at Xianxia, his face regained its gentleness. Xianxia, do you still recognize me? Xianxia, the brother that she had been separated from for 15 years. Wuxia. Chapter 1336. Xianxia widened her eyes in astonishment. Her mind was in a mess. However, in the blink of an eye, she quickly rejected this conclusion. Xianxia had long disappeared without a trace. She had searched for her brother all these years, but there was no trace of him. She had already taken him as a dead man. That car accident, her mother's death, and her brother's disappearance were like a nightmare in her heart. When she woke up in the hospital, her world had turned cold all of a sudden. The originally happy family of 3 was shattered overnight, leaving her all alone. She did not know how to believe that her mother and brother would be so heartless as to leave her behind. Cold and sorrowful dreams in the middle of the night were still painful memories that she could not get rid of. However, now, a man suddenly appeared in front of her. He looked similar to Wuxia and called out to her gently. Xianxia furrowed her brows. Perhaps she was afraid of being disappointed, so she did not dare to have any hope. Xianxia stared at him in a daze. Do you know me? Are you Xianxia? Xianxia Mu. Who are you? Xianxia was so nervous that her heart skipped a beat, and her breathing became erratic. Can't you recognize me? I'm Xiao Jie. Gong Jie was so nervous that he was suffocating. His fingers, which were holding her shoulders, could not help but tremble. His face was agitated and uneasy, and his pair of handsome eyes were filled with anxiety. Xianxia squinted her eyes and carefully studied his facial features. She seriously compared him to the handsome and adorable child in her memory. Her cautious gaze made him mistakenly think that she had lost all her memories of him. In a moment of desperation, he clasped her shoulders tightly. His eyes were burning with uneasiness and anxiety as if they were going to burn her skin. Sis, do you really not remember me? There was a hint of disappointment and urgency in his tone. Gong Jie inched closer to her. His handsome features were reflected in her eyes as he tried to awaken her dormant memories. Sis, they all say that you're dead, but I don't believe it. I've been looking for you for so long, I can't wait to turn the whole world upside down. It wasn't easy to find you. Could it be that you really don't recognize me? I've searched the entire world for you. In order to find her, he had searched the entire world. Xianxia was secretly shocked, her eyes filled with astonishment. The memories that had been sealed in the bottom of her heart finally broke through the cage, and all the memories and images came back. Xiaojie, it's really you? She asked timidly, obviously unable to believe whether this was a dream or reality. Her eyes widened in disbelief as her chest heaved up and down. Gong Jie's face was filled with joy as he hugged her tightly. His usual arrogance and unruliness faded away. It was as if he had returned to 10 years ago, when he was still sticking to her from behind, obedient and docile. Sister, it's me. Little Jia. I'm Little Jia. Sister, I've found you. I finally found you. Gong Jie's eyes reddened. He had once given up and thought that he had really lost her. However, now that the person he had been longing for was standing in front of him, it was like a dream. That kind of joy of regaining what he had lost. Forgive his lack of words, but right now, his feelings were indescribable. I miss you so much. I've been thinking about you all the time. Xianxia was in a trance for a long time. She felt as if there was a hole in her heart, and then a sour and warm current flowed into it. Chapter 1337. Where exactly did you go? I thought you were dead. Tears rolled down her cheeks and landed on his shoulders as soon as she finished speaking. Mu Jie's whereabouts were really unknown in that car accident. She thought that he was no longer alive. Now that he was standing before her, alive and well, she was shocked, overjoyed, surprised, and emotional. Gong Jie's heart ached at the sight of her teardrops. He cupped her face lovingly and gently wiped away the tears from her eyes with his fair, jade-like fingertips. His thin lips trembled slightly as he said, Sis, I'm sorry that I finally found you after searching for so long. I made you wait for me for so long. His tone was tinged with guilt as he hugged her and murmured softly, Sis, I'm sorry. He thought that he had lost her too. That dusty memory was brushed away. After 15 years of separation, the two snuggled up to each other and hugged each other tightly. They were deeply moved by each other's presence. Gong Jie said faintly, I miss you so much. Sis, I miss you. Gong Jie's deep, hoarse voice rang beside her ear. It was as seductive as an orchid. She did not know what had happened. She walked up to Xianxia and sized up the man standing before her warily. She still remembered how this man had gotten rid of a well-trained bodyguard in an instant. It seemed that he was skilled in combat. However, when she saw Gong Jie's handsome face, which was extremely similar to Xianxia's, she was stunned. Sure, he is? She asked hesitantly and tentatively. Gong Jie looked up and glanced at her coldly. His eyes were apathetic and cold. Who are you? As soon as he spoke, a few guards in black suits immediately surrounded him. Even through the pair of sunglasses, it was difficult to hide their sharp and cold eyes, staring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Muxi's shoulders shrank in fright as she retreated slightly. She was a little intimidated by this terrifying scene. She immediately looked at Xianxia for help. She is my assistant. Her name is Muxi. Xianxia immediately explained. Gong Jie's expression toward Muxi softened a little at her words, but it was still as cold as ice. Please give us some time. I have something to discuss with her. Is it convenient? He asked in a deep voice. Oh, of course it's convenient. Muxi was at a loss under his cold gaze. She broke out in a cold sweat as she said, Sir, please go ahead. Gong Jie nodded and then turned to look at her. Sis, come with me. He gently held Xianxia's hand and left under the escort of his bodyguards. Muxi stared dumbfoundedly at their departing backs before she came to her senses. Did this man just call Xianxia sister? It was only at this thought that she realized that the two of them really looked alike. Sure. Why hadn't he heard of it before? Now that it had appeared out of nowhere, he was really shocked. Although this man looks cold, he is really handsome. Gong Jie exuded a cold and aloof beauty. Wearing a white suit and a windbreaker, he was handsome and arrogant like a god. Just now, when his cold gaze swept over her, She was so nervous that her heart actually skipped a beat. The siblings' genes were just too perfect. The sister was beautiful, and the brother was as handsome as a cast. She even felt that if this Gong Jie were to enter the entertainment industry, he would definitely set off a storm. Chapter 1338. In the afternoon, the bright sun shone into the house. Yu Yu was woken up by a call from Li Hanlin. He opened his sleepy eyes and picked up the phone. Li Hanlin began to report the company's financial report for the new quarter. Xiao Yichen was still asleep, so Yu Yu got out of bed quietly and walked to the living room. He poured himself a glass of milk and drank it. He looked around and realized that Xianxia was no longer there. He walked to the table and saw the note Xianxia left behind. He glanced at it and realized that she had gone to the shopping mall to buy some things. Yu Yu sat at the table and listened to Li Hanlin's financial report while looking out of the window. However, on Li Hanlin's end, his voice suddenly paused and he said in a deep voice, "All right, Director Yun, there's one more thing I need to report to you." His tone was serious and cautious. Yu Yu could not help but become serious when he heard it. "Speak." "I've already gotten the results of the report you asked me to verify," Li Hanlin said in a serious tone. "The conclusion is that young Master Gong and your mother are related. This means that he might be your uncle." As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Yu was obviously shocked. He spat out a mouthful of milk on the table. "What did you say?" Yu Yu was shocked and doubtful. "Agent Li, are you sure there's no mistake in your report?" "I'm sure there's no mistake. I've checked it repeatedly and this is the result." Li Hanlin's tone was solemn and cautious. Obviously, he had come to this conclusion after repeated comparisons. Yu Yu's face darkened. Based on their relationship, could it be that his mother was Gong Jie's sister who had been separated from him for 15 years? Based on their seniority, Gong Jie was his uncle? Should he call Gong Jie uncle? As for Gong Jie's father, Gong Xiaoying, the current leader of Hurricane Group and the ruler of half of the fire industry, was actually his grandfather in terms of seniority. Mommy is Gong Xiaoying's daughter, the daughter of the Hurricane Group. Yu Yu's mind was thrown into disarray in the wind. How could there be such a melodramatic thing in this world? Yu Yu bit her pink lips with a conflicted expression. If that was the case, then Mommy and Gong Jie were siblings. She had heard Gong Jie mention that he had been looking for a long-lost relative. Then, the person he had been looking for a long time should be Mommy. However, he was a little conflicted. Was he really going to let Mommy and young Master Gong acknowledge each other? He didn't want his Mommy to interact with the Gong family. There was no need to elaborate on the prominent status of the Hurricane Group. On the other hand, the Gong family, who controlled the Hurricane Group, was undoubtedly a powerful and influential family. The background of the Gong family was not something that the Mu family could compare to. No matter how small a figure in the Gong family was, they could completely stand on their own and do whatever they wanted. If an analogy had to be made, it could be said that. Chapter 1339. The Gongs, on the other hand, were closely related to the world's structure. In this world, every war that started was closely related to them. In other words, the Gong family's power was obvious. The entire family system could not be explained in a few words. Moreover, the Gongs and Mus had a feud. Yu Yu still remembered how Gong Jie hated the Mus to the core. This would not do. He did not want the Gong family to acknowledge his mother. The thought of having to address Gong Jie as uncle made him feel extremely awkward. Then, he thought of how Gong Jie and Mu Yaja would stand face to face. As enemies, their eyes would turn bloodshot. According to seniority, one should address the other as brother-in-law, and the other as brother-in-law. Then, he thought of how Gong Jie would grit his teeth when he saw Mu Yaja. That scene was quite scary no matter how he thought about it. Back then, the Mus were the ones who caused his grandmother's death. Although Mu Shang was not the direct culprit, he was still the one who indirectly caused Mu Qingqing's death. Gong Jie must hate him to the core. He must hate Mu Yaja too. This feud between the Gongs and Mus would not be written off easily no matter what. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that Yu Yu did not want his mother to know his identity. If she knew that he was involved in smuggling, arms and oil at such a young age, he wondered what kind of shocked expression Mommy would have on her face when the time came. Yu Yu had a headache and held his forehead. His temples were throbbing with a dull throbbing pain. "Director Yun, what should we do about this matter? Should we report it to Master Gong?" Keep it a secret for now. Yu said in a low voice. Let me think about how to handle this matter. Just as he said that, the door lock turned. Yu turned around and saw that Mu Yaja was back. He immediately lowered his voice and instructed, I have something on. I'll hang up first. I'll contact you later. All right. After saying that, he hung up the phone and went up to greet him. His face was no longer gloomy as he raised a cute pink smile. Daddy, you're back. Mu Yaja stood at the door exhausted. He lowered his head slightly and saw Yu walking up to him obediently. She took the jacket from him and hung it on the hanger. He felt a sense of warmth in his heart. Yu, Daddy will hug you. He reached out and pulled Yu into his arms. The little boy was very light and much thinner than Xianxia. Mu Yaja kissed his rosy cheeks and asked gently, Where are Mommy and Big Brother? Big Brother is taking an afternoon nap. As for Mommy, she went shopping. She should be back soon, right? Yes. Daddy, are you thirsty? I'll pour you some tea. It's okay. Mu Yaja walked to the sofa and sat down with him in his arms. He held Yu's little hand and squeezed his palm gently. His thin lips curved slightly. It's rare to see you so obedient in front of me. In the past, Yu would only show such an obedient and cute side to Xianxia. Initially, he was cold and distant to him. Later on, he slowly accepted him. Now, he was open to him and was no longer so resistant. This little boy had accepted him. Yu's little face blushed, but he snorted coldly and said arrogantly, Don't be so smug. If it weren't for the fact that you're the man my mommy has chosen, I wouldn't be so gentle to you. Mu Yaja smiled dotingly and couldn't be bothered to expose him. Chapter 1340. He had experienced the little guy's awkward personality before. Mu Yaja's handsome eyes curved slightly. He gazed at the little guy's delicate face and kissed him. Whatever you say. Xianxia woke up and got out of bed. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and walked to the door. When he saw that Mu Yaja had returned, he immediately went forward and threw himself into his arms. Daddy, you're back. 2 pink glutinous rice balls, one on the left and one on the right, occupied his arms, like 2 lazy kittens, lying in his arms, incomparably intimate. With the 2 little guys in his arms, Mu Yaja's gloominess was instantly swept away. Yu's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at it and saw that it was an international number. It was Hurricane Group's internal number. He recognized the code at a glance. It was Gong Jie's number. He immediately took the phone and walked to the side to answer the call. Young Master Gong? What's the matter? Yu, I have good news to announce. On the other end of the line, Gong Jie's usually cold and aloof voice was now tinged with joy and cheerfulness. Yu's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively sensed that something was wrong. However, he still suppressed it and carefully probed. What's the good news? Tell me. I've found her. Gong Jie announced excitedly. He paused and added, I've found the person I've been looking for. Yu's heart skipped a beat. He was nervous and his tone became sharp. Who? My sister, my biological sister. At the mention of Xianxia, Gong Jie's tone suddenly became warm and gentle. He was even extremely affectionate. Her name is Xianxia. Hua. Yu's mind went blank. He felt a sharp pain in his heart and muttered, Xianxia? You found her. Yes. Gong Jie briefly explained to him how he met Xianxia in the mall. The more Yu listened, the more frightened he became. When he found out that Gong Jie and Xianxia were together, his heart skipped a beat. He was afraid that Gong Jie would accidentally reveal his identity to Xianxia. Young Master Gong, where are you? I'll go find you. I'm not free right now. Gong Jie continued. Yu, I'm with her now. I plan to bring her back to the Gong family. Yu was stunned again. Oh my god. This was too crazy. He hung up the phone abruptly and stood by the flower bed. After thinking about it, he felt more and more uneasy. Gong Jie said that he wanted to bring Mommy back to the Gong family? No, he had to stop this as much as possible. He couldn't let Mommy return to the Gong family. Suddenly, he dialed Li Hanlin's number. Agent Li, I have something urgent to attend to. Come and pick me up. Li Hanlin sensed his anxious tone and didn't say much. He immediately said that he would arrive in 10 minutes and hung up the phone. Yu returned to his room and changed his clothes. He walked to the living room and told Mu Yaja that he had something to attend to. Mu Yaja saw that he was in a hurry and frowned. "Where are you going?" Yu pondered for a moment and explained, "Daddy, I have something very important to attend to." With that, Yu didn't have time to care about Mu Yaja and left without looking back. Chapter 1341. Gong Jie hung up the phone, bought a cup of milk tea, and got into the car. Sure. Do you want a cup of milk tea?" Gong Jie passed the milk tea to her with a gentle smile. His eyes were as beautiful and charming as the stars in the night sky. Xianxia took the cup of milk tea from him and even forgot to thank him. Her face was still filled with shock. Everything that had happened in front of her was like a dream. She could not help but wonder if she was in a dream or reality. She was still a little confused, and her thoughts were in a mess. She had never thought that the person she had been thinking about for more than 10 years would actually be like a god, descending from the sky in front of her. Therefore, when Gong Jie sat in the car, she stared at his face unblinkingly. She was in a daze and could not blink for a long time. She was a little afraid. She was afraid that if she blinked, the living person sitting in front of her would disappear into thin air. It was too unbelievable. The scenes from more than 10 years ago still appeared clearly in front of her eyes. The memories that had been sealed away suddenly broke through the cage and flashed before her eyes. Mu Jie was her twin brother. She was the elder sister and he was the younger brother. From the time she could remember, other than Mu Qingqing's gentle smile, there was more of Mu Jie's mischievous and adorable face. Mu Jie was born more than 10 minutes after her. They were born one after the other. Moreover, Mu Jie grew up well and was taller than her by a few centimeters. Therefore, he was rarely willing to call her sister. Most of the time, the little guy would follow behind her and call her Sure. Sure, play with me. Sure, I can't sleep. Can you tell me a story? Sure, why are you crying again? Did someone bully you again? Tell me, who bullied you? I'll teach him a lesson for you. She corrected him over and over again. Whether it was threats or coaxing, the little fellow was not convinced. He even questioned, "You were only born a few minutes earlier than me. Why should I call you sister?" Even now, Xianxia could not help but want to laugh every time she recalled the young Mu Jie's awkward little face. But now, her younger brother had grown up. He had grown from a little bean who had followed her around to learn how to walk. Now he was 1.9 meters tall, handsome, and had a domineering aura. His originally fair and tender facial features had become even more profound, exquisite, and handsome. That cute and tender little face in her memory had now become a young man. Handsome brows and eyes, a well-defined outline, a high nose and thin lips, and a sharp sense of asceticism. His hair was dyed silver, and it fluttered in the wind, making his chin look as thin as a knife. Xianxia felt a little regretful. She felt that it was a pity that she could not be by his side and grow up with him. She had missed so many memories with him. Although she was vexed, she also felt that the heavens had been kind to her. At least, they would meet again in this lifetime. Seeing that she kept staring at him, Gong Jie smiled slightly and let go of his high and mighty posture. Just like when they were young, he sat obediently beside her and lowered his head to look at her. He was so much taller than her. Therefore, even though she was sitting, she had to raise her head to look at him. Gong Jie considerately bent down slightly and lowered his body, forcing himself to look at her shoulder level. Chapter 1342. She wanted to take a good look at him. Then, he would let her take a good look at him. Xianxia's heart warmed up. Gong Jie, who had grown up, was even gentler than when he was young. In his eyes, there was a doting smile that almost overflowed. His gentle gaze filled her entire heart. It was warm and cozy. Xianxia said desolately, "Xiao Jie, I'm sorry that I lost you for so long. It's my fault." When Gong Jie saw the desolate expression on her face, he felt as though his heart had been pierced and he felt extremely sorry for her. "Sister, don't be sad. It's my fault." Xianxia pursed her lips and gently cupped his face. She looked at his face carefully and her gaze swept across every inch of his face. Suddenly, she smiled. "Xiao Jie, you've grown up. You're even more handsome than when you were young." Gong Jie smiled and grabbed her finger. He pressed it against his heart and said in a slightly annoyed tone, "Sister, I've been very handsome since I was young. That's a well-known fact." Xianxia was amused by him. She could not help but use her index finger to gently tap the tip of his nose. "You're still as shameless as when you were young. You haven't changed at all." This small action was something that Xianxia had done to him since they were young. Every time he was mischievous or did something wrong, he would hide behind her and need her to clean up the situation. She could not bear to blame him, so she would gently tap the tip of his nose and pretended to be angry. This was a little tacit understanding between the two of them. Xianxia was a little greedy for the gentleness of her fingertips. He could not help but miss the innocent times when he was young. He said softly, "Sister, tap me again." Xianxia tapped him again with her fingertips. Xianxia could not help but hold her hand and gently kiss the back of her hand. Then, he greedily pressed his face against it. The back of her hand was a little cold. She had been like this since she was young. Her physique was not good. Throughout the year, there was almost no warmth on her hand, especially on the back of her hand, which was always cold. During winter, she liked to stuff her hand into his embrace to warm it up. Every time this happened, Xianxia's mouth would always twitch from her cold little hands. However, he couldn't bear to chase her little hand away. Thus, Xianxia resisted the cold and silently warmed her hands. He didn't seem to care about it, as if he wasn't afraid of the cold, but in fact, he was freezing. "Sister, I'll take you back, okay?" Xianxia leaned against the back of her hand and said softly. Xianxia was stunned. "Go back." "Back to where?" "Back to our home." Xianxia looked up, his handsome face filled with joy. "If father knows that I found you, he'll be very happy. He always thought that you were no longer in this world. Your appearance is a huge surprise to him." "Father." Xianxia was even more confused. "What father?" "Our father." Xianxia's face froze, and her eyes dimmed a little. "Xiaojia, we only have a mother. We don't have a father. Have you forgotten?" Ever since she could remember, she had never seen her father. She only had her mother and her younger brother. As for who her biological father was, that man had never appeared from the beginning to the end. She had not even seen his shadow. From her mother, she knew that her biological father was a very handsome man. However, in her heart, this man had heartlessly abandoned them. At least that was what she thought. Chapter 1343. Xianxia seemed to have seen through her thoughts and said, "Sis, you've misunderstood. Father didn't abandon us." "Don't mention that man," Xianxia gloomily said. "He's not fit to be a father. I haven't even seen his shadow since I was young. Why should I acknowledge him?" After a pause, she asked suspiciously, "Xiaojia, where have you been for the past 10 years?" Xianxia was silent for a moment before he looked up and told her what happened 20 years ago. Back then, when Hurricane Group was first established, it was just a shipping conglomerate. Gong Xiaoying, who was now an all-powerful military conglomerate, used to be the scion of a shipping family. His father was a famous shipping magnate, Gong Li. At that time, the Mu family's business was at its most glorious. At a banquet, Mu Qingqing and Gong Xiaoying met by chance. At that time, Mu Qingqing was wearing a luxurious dress. She walked in leisurely, attracting Gong Xiaoying's attention. At that time, Gong Xiaoying was in his 20s. He was suave and extraordinarily handsome. Although he had seen many beauties, he was still deeply stunned by Mu Qingqing's splendid attire. He invited her to dance with him. Mu Qingqing gladly agreed. Sparks flew between the two at the ball. They fell in love, got to know each other, and promised each other. Mu Shang soon learned of this and immediately asked her to cut off her relationship with Gong Xiaoying as soon as possible. In his eyes, the Gong family at that time could not be compared to the Mu family at all. Moreover, he was selfish toward her. He only hoped that she could stay by his side. How could he tolerate her being tainted by other men? Mu Qingqing was at the age of puberty. How could her love for Gong Xiaoying be cut off so easily? Although she agreed on the surface, she still secretly met with Gong Xiaoying behind Mu Shang's back. Gong Xiaoying also wanted her. However, at that time, his father ordered him to go abroad to take over the maritime affairs of the Eurasian region. Gong Xiaoying then asked Mu Qingqing to go abroad with him and leave the Mu family. They also agreed to leave the capital together. After much consideration, Mu Qingqing could not bring herself to harden her heart. Thus, she decided to confess this matter to Mu Shang, hoping that he would grant her wish. Unexpectedly, when Mu Sheng learned of this matter, not only did he not agree to it, he even flew into a rage and ordered his men to put her under house arrest. At the appointed time, Mu Qingqing did not show up. Gong Xiaoying left alone in dejection. Mu Qingqing missed the appointment and fell ill from lovesickness. In the end, she fell ill in bed. Later, she was found to be pregnant. When Mu Sheng heard about this, he did not even need to think about who the father of the child in her stomach was. At the thought that she was pregnant out of wedlock, he became even more furious and ordered her to abort the child. Mu Qingqing refused. In order to protect her child, she locked herself in her room and refused to come out. Later, with the help of the Mu family's servants, Mu Qingqing escaped from the Mu family and secretly gave birth to 2 children. They were a pair of boy-girl twins. Mu Qingqing then changed her name and took care of the 2 children. While avoiding the Mu family's pursuit, she secretly raised the 2 children. It was only after a car accident later that she was buried in a sea of fire. After that accident, Yun Shishir and Gong Jie survived. Chapter 1344. After Mu Qingqing left the Mu family, she got in touch with Gong Xiaoying. At first, Gong Xiaoying thought that the reason why Mu Qingqing didn't show up was because she didn't have any feelings for him. However, when he found out from her that she was under house arrest, including the fact that she was under house arrest by Mu Sheng, Gong Xiaoying flew into a rage and declared that he would seek revenge on the Mu family. At that time, the Gong group had gone through a few years of consolidation. Gong Li handed over the family's affairs to him, and under his management, its power grew continuously. It was now in existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Mu family. In front of the Mu family, the Gong family had the confidence to be arrogant. However, Mu Qingqing cared about their relationship and asked Gong Xiaoying not to hurt the Mu family's foundation even if he wanted to take action. Gong Xiaoying, however, did not listen to her. In a fit of anger, he mobilized all his forces to deal a heavy blow to the Mu group. At that time, Mu Sheng's mind was not on the Mu group at all. He was focused on finding Mu Qingqing and had no time to care about the Mu group. Hence, under the Gong family's attack, the Mu group suffered a heavy blow. From then on, the Mu group's morale was low and could not recover from the setback. Gradually, rumors spread in the capital that the legendary Mu group was about to collapse. It was only later when Mu Yaja took office and turned the tide, bringing the Mu group back on track. Of course, this was all in the future. Gong Xiaoying was overjoyed when he learned from Mu Qingqing that she had given birth to a pair of children for him. He was overjoyed when he learned that they had a pair of children. He promised her that, after this storm, he would bring her and the children back to the Gong family and live happily together. Mu Qingqing's heart was filled with longing. Being able to live happily with the man she loved was the most beautiful dream in her heart. For this, she had been waiting for him silently without any complaints or regrets. However, at that time, Gong Xiaoying had already single-handedly established the Hurricane Group. For a long time, Gong Xiaoying was busy dealing with the Eurasian shipping matters. Hence, he could not be in 2 places at once and could only entrust Mu Qingqing and the children to a trusted aide in the country. That aide had some authority too. With him covering for them, Mu Sheng could not find Mu Qingqing's hiding place for a while. On the day of the car accident, Mu Qingqing and Gong Xiaoying had agreed to meet at the port for him to bring her away. On that day, Gong Xiaoying had waited for her for so long, but she still didn't show up. In the end, he missed her again. Regretfully, this missed opportunity for a lifetime. The only thing he received was a piece of unfortunate news and a handsome boy brought back by his men from the hospital. That boy had temporarily lost a part of his memory in that car accident due to external injuries. He forgot his own name, forgot who his mother was, forgot who his relatives were. Mu had even forgotten who he was. When he opened his eyes, his mind was in a state of chaos. He was in a daze. Gong Xiaoying's men arrived and brought him back to the Gong family. When the man learned of Mu Qingqing's death, he was stunned for a long time. Other than grief, he felt even more lost and powerless. At that time, he already had a lot. However, the woman he wanted the most was always missed by a series of coincidences. He missed her again and again. Chapter 1345. He sank into deep regret and pain, unable to extricate himself from it. For a long time, he was unable to recover from his shock. When his men brought Gong Jie to him, Gong Xiaoying squatted down in front of the child and carefully examined him. The child's facial features were well defined. Although he was still young and childish, He could vaguely see his own reflection on his face. His eyes, in particular, were similar to Mu Qingqing's. According to his men, only one of the two children survived. His daughter, too, had unfortunately lost her life in the accident. His son, on the other hand, was the only survivor of the accident. Gong Xiaoying was so heartbroken that he was on the verge of paralysis. He spared no effort to investigate this matter. He initially thought that the accident was a natural disaster, but when the truth was revealed, he did not expect it to be a man-made disaster. It was said that Mu Qingqing was chased by the men sent by the Mu family on her way to the harbor. After more than an hour of desperate struggle, the car could not brake in time and careened off the cliff, crashing down. According to the investigation report, the brake malfunction was due to someone tampering with it. When Gong Xiaoying received this report, his hands trembled uncontrollably. He hated it. He hated it. He hated the cruel executioner of the Mu family to the bone. At the same time, he was filled with regret. Mu Shang, that devil! If he had known this would happen, he would not have listened to Mu Qingqing's advice not to hurt the Mu family's foundation. Alas, what did her gentleness, kindness, and understanding get in return? In return, it was that devil's selfish possessiveness and overbearing lust. If it were not for that tyrant, his woman would not have been separated from him forever. Gong Xiaoying's hatred and disgust toward the Mu family were unreservedly instilled in Gong Jie's mind. Therefore, Gong Jie hated the Mu family to the core. It was also because of this that when Gong Jie mentioned the Mu family, the hatred that had been deeply imprinted in his heart since he was young would unscrupulously erupt. It was as if the hatred for the Mu family had already evolved into his nature. He only knew that if it weren't for the Mu family, his mother and sister wouldn't have died in the car accident. If it wasn't for the Mu family, perhaps her father and mother would have lived happily together for the rest of their lives. They wouldn't be separated forever like this. Therefore, the seed of revenge had been planted in his bones since he was very young. As time passed, it grew stronger and stronger. His hatred for the Mu family had already seeped into his bones and blood. It was inseparable. It was rumored that the head of the Gong family, Gong Xiaoying, had 4 children. It was said that Gong Xiaoying's first child had died at an early age due to a mishap. If not for that mishap, the child would have been 24 years old by now. Gong Jie, on the other hand, was ranked second, so everyone respectfully addressed him as second master. Although he was the second young master, Gong Jie's position in the Gong family was undoubtedly the oldest. As the eldest son and a core member of the Hurricane Group, Gong Jie's performance did not disappoint and was outstanding. When he debuted and took over the company's affairs, he was only 12 years old. In order to let him gain experience, Gong Xiaoying put the North American market under his name. Chapter 1346. In just 3 short years, Gong Jie had become an independent figure. Now, at the age of 24, he had become the leader of the Hurricane Group and the chief commander of the North American market. At the same time, he was also a core member of the Hurricane Group's Eye in the Sky plan. He held a prominent position. If there were any role in the Hurricane Group that you admired, it would be the crown prince of the Gong family, the person in charge of the North American market, Gong Jie. Sis, come back to the Gong family with me. If father knows that you're still alive, he'll be very happy. Xianxia was stunned. The Gong family? What kind of place is that? It's your home. No. Xianxia's smile faded a little. My home is here. Gong Jie was stunned. He felt as if his heart had been stabbed. Xiao Jie, I really don't have any concept of our home or our father that you're talking about. I grew up in this city and settled down here. This is my home. Xianxia said calmly. As for the so-called Gong family and their so-called father that Gong Jie had mentioned, her heart did not waver at all. She had no intention of acknowledging him either. She still felt a little hatred and alienation toward Gong Xiaoying. Back then, if he hadn't been so meticulous and focused on his career, if he had been able to fulfill his responsibility as a man and protect his mother, her mother would not have died at such a young age. Mu Qingqing's death was indeed related to the Mu family. However, as a man who had been entrusted to his mother, how could he not protect her? Could it be that he did not have the ability to do so? Not necessarily. Those were just excuses. At the end of the day, it was because in his heart, his mother's position was not as important as his career. Therefore, Xianxia also felt a little resentment toward Gong Xiaoying. Moreover, so many years had passed. She really did not have any feelings for this nominal father of hers. If she really returned to the Gong family with Gong Jia, what would happen to Yu Yu? What would happen to Xiao Yichen? Would the Gong family acknowledge these two children? Gong Xiaoying hated the Mu family so much that he hated them to the bone. How could she hope that Gong Xiaoying would acknowledge the two children? Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen had the blood of the Mu family. What about the blood of the tyrant that Gong Xiaoying hated to the core? Would he acknowledge them? Even if he was willing to acknowledge Yu Yu and... What about Mu Yaja? He would definitely not acknowledge him. She didn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps and repeat her mistakes. Gong Xiaoying, Yichen, sister. Gong Jie's heart throbbed painfully. It wasn't easy for me to find you. I don't want to lose you again. Can't we go home together? Yun Shishir was silent for a moment. Then she said slowly, Xiao Jie, I'm really happy to know that you're still alive. However, I really can't do it if you want me to go back to the Gong family with you. She paused for a moment. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. Then, a trace of loneliness appeared on her face. I really can't forgive that man. Why? Gong Jie persistently asked. Chapter 1347. Yun Shishir flared up all of a sudden. You don't remember, but I do. Mommy has been waiting for him for so many years. 10 years. In the end, what did I get in return? Shishir. Gong Jie was taken aback and a little stunned. Yun Shishir sneered again. He didn't take responsibility at all. How am I supposed to acknowledge him as father now? Okay. Sis, calm down. I won't force you to return to the Gong family. I won't force you. Gong Jie hurriedly comforted her. He, who was usually cold and aloof, showed a rare loss of control and panic on his face. He repeatedly consoled her. I won't force you to acknowledge your father. I won't. So, sis, don't be so agitated, okay? Okay. Anyway, I won't return to the Gong family. Yun Shishir reiterated her stand. Gong Jie was a little frustrated, but there was nothing he could do about it. Sis, let's have dinner together today. No. I have to go home. Yun Shishir thought of Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen. They should still be waiting for her at home. It was time for her to go home. Gong Jie was reluctant, but he could not bear to force Yun Shishir, so he did not ask her to stay for dinner. He gently asked, Where is your home? I'll send you back. Yun Shishir gave him an address, and Gong Jie instructed the chauffeur to send her home. On the way, Yun Tianyu called. The moment the call went through, Yu Yu's anxious voice could be heard from the other end. Mommy, where are you now? I'm on my way home. Yu Yu was startled and still had lingering fears. He thought that his mommy was about to be kidnapped back to the Gong family by Gong Jie, so he was rushing over to rescue her. Yu Yu sighed helplessly and ordered Li Hanlin to turn around and prepare to return home. Since mommy was going home, he was relieved. Moreover, from Yun Shishir's tone, he could not detect anything strange. It seemed that the Gong Jie had not revealed his identity for the time being. Mommy probably did not know about it yet. Yu Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Mommy, when are you coming home? He asked again obediently. About 10 minutes left. Yu Yu's tone immediately lightened up. All right, then I'll wait at home for mother's return. Yun Shishir hung up the phone. Gong Jie immediately asked with concern, Who called? Yun Shishir did not hide anything from Gong Jie. She smiled and said, My son. Gong Jie was stunned and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. You have a son? Yes. In that case, Xiao Jie, you're an uncle now. Gong Jie still could not come back to his senses for a long time. You're still so young. Why did you? Gong Jie was confused. He finally digested this fact. His thin lips twitched slightly and formed a complicated arc. I didn't expect that I already have a nephew. Yun Shishir's lips curled into a smile. Her mood brightened at the thought of the two lads. How old are you? He just had his birthday not long ago. He's 7 years old. 7 years old? Gong Jie was shocked again and his gaze froze. You gave birth at the age of 18? Because of this, Gong Jie's expression could not help but turn ugly. Chapter 1348. There was no doubt that she had given birth to a child before getting married. However, what Gong Jie was more concerned about was why she had given birth to a child before getting married. How could this be? A bad feeling arose in Gong Jie's heart. What exactly did a girl go through at the age of 18 to have a child before getting married? She was only 24. The child was already 7 years old. This was not the normal life trajectory of a woman, was it? This matter is a little complicated. I'll explain it to you slowly another time, okay? Xianxia did not know how to bring it up to him. In fact, no matter how many years had passed, Xianxia was still a little embarrassed to talk about this past. When she was 18 years old, she gave herself to someone to save the Yun family from bankruptcy. She took the unconventional path and signed a surrogacy contract with the Mu family. This was undoubtedly an act of selling her body. However, she did not regret it. In fact, she was even glad that it was because of this incident that she gave birth to Yu. This child was probably the happiest gift that the heavens had given her in her long life. Yu was the best gift that God had given her. She had always felt that this gift was extremely precious. However, she still felt that surrogacy was indeed a difficult thing to talk about. At least, in front of Gong Jie, she was still not mentally prepared to let him know about this matter. Therefore, she decided to keep it a secret for the time being. Gong Jie's expression froze, but he smiled and said, "Tomorrow, okay?" Tomorrow, let's set a time and place. Sis, we've been apart for so long. I really want to know how you've been for the past 10 years. Gong Jie looked at her expectantly. He had not been able to participate in her life for a full 15 years. He hoped that he could make up for this regret as soon as possible. Xianxia nodded. The car stopped at the entrance of Xianghu Walk. Xianxia got out of the car and closed the door. She waved at him and said, "I'm home. You should go home early too." "Okay." "Xiao Jie, where are you staying now?" Xianxia suddenly asked. Gong Jie smiled and said, "The Gong family has businesses all over the world. This time, I'm here to meet someone. Because my business has come to an end, I'll be staying in the country for a while." "Okay, then, see you tomorrow." Xianxia smiled and waved at him. She looked back 3 times with each step and entered the door. Gong Jie stared at her back in a daze until her figure disappeared into the horizon. Then, he reluctantly withdrew his gaze. However, when he turned his head, he caught a glimpse of a black wallet that had fallen on the seat. It seemed that she had left it on the seat in a hurry. Out of curiosity, he picked up the wallet. It was a wallet-style wallet. He flipped it open, and a photo came into view. Gong Jie couldn't help but notice the photo. His gaze was fixed on it. However, when he saw that it was a photo of Xianxia and a little munchkin, he was stunned. In the photo, Xianxia was standing at the school gate with a delicate-looking little kid in her arms. The little munchkin looked to be no more than 5 years old, but his eyes were delicate and adorable. His cheeks were rosy and tender as he nestled in Xianxia's arms with a sweet smile. Gong Jie recognized the child in the photo at once. Tianyu. How could it be him? Gong Jie was once again thrown into disarray. What exactly was going on? Chapter 1349. Gong Jie suddenly recalled Xianxia's words. She said that she had a 7-year-old child. Be it in terms of looks or details, there was no doubt that Tianyu and Xianxia were mother and son. In other words, the legendary genius who developed the Deva Eye project and proposed the super aerial control theory, who could break through the Pentagon's defense system with his eyes closed, was actually his nephew. Did you know about this? That day, when he pointed to the poster in Yu's office and questioned him, this child clearly knew about Xianxia's identity, yet he still pretended to be a fool and acted cute in front of him. He, on the other hand, was kept in the dark by this child for so long. Furious, Gong Jie picked up his phone and dialed his nephew's number. Just as Tianyu picked up the call, Gong Jie's cold and gloomy voice sounded from the other end. Tianyu, don't you owe me an explanation? Yu, on the other hand, was baffled by such an abrupt question. It came out of nowhere, so he could not react in time. He asked in a daze, "Second Master Gong, what do you mean by this?" When Gong Jie heard this, he thought that Yu was still deliberately hiding things from him. Seeing that the child was still pretending to be a fool, Gong Jie almost lost his temper over the phone. However, at the thought that this child was, after all, his little nephew, he held himself back. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he calmly asked, "My little nephew, how much longer do you want to hide this from your uncle?" His tone was faint with a hint of displeasure. The moment Yun Tianyu heard this, he knew that the man had already figured out his identity and his relationship with Xianxia. Thus, he decided not to hide it any longer and smiled. "Master Gong, you already know?" Gong Jie snorted. You, let me remind you, according to seniority, you should call me uncle." Yun Tianyu burst into laughter. "Second Master Gong, you're so adorable. Did you only realize it now? When I first saw you at the airport, I had my suspicions. It's just that I had too many things on hand at that time, so I didn't have time to prove it." Yu paused and suddenly frowned in disdain. "You're so slow and stupid. I'm starting to wonder if you're my biological uncle." Gong Jie's face darkened at once. He gritted his teeth and said, "How dare you tease me? I wouldn't dare. How would I dare to tease my uncle?" Although Yu said that, she was just teasing him. Gong Jie was getting angrier and angrier. Yun Tianyu was obviously teasing him. He, on the other hand, had been in the industry for so many years and had always acted swiftly and decisively. Now, he was actually being teased by a 7-year-old child. Gong Jie felt indignant. Yu, how dare you make fun of me? You're dead meat. Don't. You've wronged me." Yu's pink lips pursed slightly as a look of grievance appeared on her tender face. "I only had my suspicions before, and I only found out today that you're my uncle. I didn't mean to tease you." "How did you find out?" Gong Jie narrowed his eyes. He was very suspicious of how this lad came to this conclusion. Yu smiled and decided to come clean. "Yesterday, I secretly plucked a strand of hair from your head." Gong Jie's face darkened when he heard that. Chapter 1350. Gong Jie, on the other hand, was secretly surprised because he did not feel anything at all. "When did you do it?" The boy replied slowly, "When you stood up, I took advantage of the situation to pull it out." The corners of Gong Jie's eyes twitched fiercely. This kid was really clever. He had actually secretly pulled out a strand of hair from his head to do a DNA test. Only he could think of such a thing. Gong Jie snorted coldly. His displeased tone showed that he was slightly dissatisfied. Yu licked his pink lips and smiled. "Young Master Gong, don't be angry. I was just trying to protect Mommy. What if the person you were looking for was not Mommy? Wouldn't it be a mistake then? I'm more cautious when doing things. If it wasn't foolproof, I wouldn't have done it." "Then you've got your answer now." Gong Jie snorted, but a look of admiration flashed across his handsome face. Although he still felt that it was quite unpleasant to be teased by a 7-year-old child. However, when he thought about how Yu had done it to protect Xianxia, he was full of admiration. After all, if it were him, he would also be so cautious and confirm before making a decision. Yu muttered, "Now I know. You're Mommy's younger brother. No wonder, from the first time I saw you, I felt that you and Mommy looked a lot alike. At that time, I started to have my suspicions." When he said this, Xianxia's gentle smile suddenly appeared in Gong Jie's eyes. His eyes were as gentle as water in an instant. "Yes, your Mommy and I have looked very alike since we were young. People who saw us were very surprised. They said that we looked like we were made from the same mold. Twins of different sexes with a union of different eggs. Generally speaking, it was very rare for twins of different sexes to look so alike. However, for some reason, Xianxia and Gong Jie looked like they were made from the same mold since they were born. When they were young, Mu Qingqing thought it was fun, so she cut Xianxia's hair short and put on a little suit. She also let Gong Jie's hair grow long and put on a little skirt. When they stood together, they did not look out of place at all. Both of them had a pair of eyes that could captivate all living things. Their eyes were like silk. Gong Jie's eyes were very long. Coupled with his deep eyes and thick and long eyelashes, at first glance, it looked like he had put on very deep eyeliner. Yu found it interesting as well. Gong Jie and Xianxia stood side by side, and one could tell at a glance that they were siblings. Gong Jie said coldly, "Since you know my identity, shouldn't you change the way you address me?" Yu's eyebrows raised. "There's no hurry to change the way I address you." He had a feeling that he was at a disadvantage when he changed from young Master Gong to uncle. He was a little unhappy. Gong Jie smiled evilly and said playfully, "Little nephew, if I'm not wrong, your mommy doesn't know about your relationship with the hurricane group, right?" Yu was stunned. "So, she doesn't know about your identity? Has she been kept in the dark about what you've done in hurricane group in the past 2 years, as well as the waves you've stirred up?" Gong Jie's voice deepened as his tone deepened with a hint of meaning. Yu was speechless. He did not even need to think about what Gong Jie was trying to say. Yu was speechless as he looked into the distance. This Gong Jie was more two-faced than he thought. Chapter 1351. Gong Jie did not know what he was thinking though, so he decided to provoke him further. "Humph. Actually, I'm curious, too. What would your mommy think if she were to find out that you're playing with arms, smuggling, oil, and hacking at such a young age instead of studying properly? She'll definitely teach you a lesson." "Uncle." On the other end of the line, Yu said through gritted teeth. Gong Jie was satisfied. Good boy, little nephew. But I'm curious too." Yu's eyes were smiling. "Take a guess. If mommy finds out that her precious son is playing with these things at such a young age and that it was his uncle who taught him, what will she think?" Gong Jie's face darkened instantly. Mimicking his earlier threatening tone, Yu casually enunciated each word. "Uncle, if mommy finds out that you've brought me into the oil business, smuggling business, and even instigated me to play with firearms, she'll definitely explode in anger. It's scary just thinking about it when mommy gets angry." Gong Jie immediately softened and lost all of his earlier arrogance. Yu, let's talk things over. Don't threaten people so easily." Yu was satisfied. This round was a draw. No one was at a disadvantage. When it came to eloquence, he had never lost to anyone. Gong Jie held the phone and had a lot of questions to ask. He had been separated from Xianxia for 15 years. 15 years was not a long time, but it had taken up 3/4 of his life. After being separated for such a long time, he had a lot of things to say and a lot of questions to ask. However, when the words reached his throat, they were stuck. For a moment, he could not think of anything to ask. Or perhaps, there were too many things he wanted to ask. For a moment, he did not know where to start. He wanted to know if she had been living well for the past 15 years. Had she been wronged in any way? Had she been bullied? 15 years ago, after they were separated, where did she go? Was she adopted? What exactly happened to her when she was 18 that caused her to have a child at such a young age? When Gong Jie thought of this, his heart ached. 18 years old was still so young. In this country, girls of this age should still be studying. He did some calculations. At that time, she should still be in university and hadn't graduated yet. She had a child when she was still in school. What exactly happened? Could it be? Was she bullied by other boys? This was the only hypothesis that Gong Jie could think of. At the age of 18, she was young and ignorant. She was inexperienced and inexperienced. Girls were easily deceived by boys. She foolishly trusted him with her heart, only to be toyed with. Or was it because she was violated? Thinking of this suspicion, Gong Jie's heart suddenly surged with rage. If he were to find out what had happened 7 years ago, if he were to find out who the man who had bullied her was, he would dismember that man into 1,000 pieces and throw him into the sea to feed the fish. In the restaurant, Mu Yaja elegantly sneezed, and then his face was filled with suspicion. Was someone talking bad about him? Yu sensed that Gong Jie's breathing suddenly became heavy. Not knowing what he was thinking, he asked lightly, "Young Master Gong, what are you thinking about?" "What did you call me?" Gong Jie raised his eyebrows unhappily and reminded him. Only then did the boy realize what he had said. He muttered unwillingly, "I'm not used to the sudden change of address. Uncle." Chapter 1352. What a coincidence. Sometimes, fate really knows how to play tricks on people. Yu sighed like an old man. Who would have thought that the world with more than 6 billion people would turn out to be one big family in the end? That meant that his grandfather was the head of the Gong family, Gong Shaoying. Yu's lips twitched. Life was truly a fantasy, truly miraculous. Your mommy gave birth to you when she was only 18? Gong Jie asked the question in his heart. She was pregnant at such a young age. At that time, she should still be in school and hadn't graduated yet, right? Why did she give birth so early? Yu Yu was stunned and did not respond immediately. He only replied vaguely, "Mommy is actually pregnant with twins. I have an older brother." However, he avoided the topic. He could not possibly talk about what happened 7 years ago. 7 years ago, when the Yun family went bankrupt, his mother signed a surrogate pregnancy contract with the Mu family in order to repay the family's debts. If Gong Jie were to find out about this, she was afraid that he would have another bloody grudge in his heart. He would never be able to forgive the Mu family in this lifetime. Is she married? Gong Jie was very concerned about this question. Yu Yu touched the bridge of his nose and said, "Yes, she is. But Mommy's status is a little special, so they haven't held a wedding yet." In his mind, Mommy and Daddy were already married. They just lacked a certificate and a grand wedding. In that case, Mommy and Daddy were unlicensed. What status? Mommy is a celebrity. She's busy with her career now, so they haven't held a wedding yet. Gong Jie was even more confused as he listened. So she gave birth out of wedlock? Yu Yu's lips twitched. Yes, you can say that. Gong Jie's eyelids twitched. Since she's already pregnant, why isn't she married? It's not good for a woman to have a child out of wedlock. His tone suddenly turned cold. Could it be that bastard wants to play with my sister? The boy was taken aback by his ferocious tone. Uncle, calm down. Calm down. Don't get agitated. Gong Jie couldn't calm down. He was very serious when it came to Xianxia. Uncle, don't you worry too much? Calm down. If Daddy can't give Mommy a proper status, even I won't agree to it, let alone you. Yu Yu said with an elegant smile. So, who is that man? Gong Jie squeezed out a few words through gritted teeth. Towards Xianxia's man, he didn't know why, but he was obviously very hostile. There was also a sour smell when it was smelled. Yu Yu broke out in a cold sweat. He finally saw it clearly. This Gong Jie turned out to be a siscon. Yu Yu's eyes twitched as he said perfunctorily, "I'm preparing for dinner. Uncle, let's talk again when you're free. I'm hanging up." Wait, you haven't answered me. Without waiting for Gong Jie to finish speaking, Yun Tianyu hung up the phone. Yu Yu walked into the living room and coincidentally bumped into Xianxia. Before Yu Yu could go up to her, Xiao Yichen ran to her and threw himself into her arms. "Mommy, you're back." He hugged Xianxia tightly in joy. A day apart felt like 3 years. Yu Yu glanced at him. What a clingy little guy. Chapter 1353. Good boy, good boy. I've been waiting for Mommy to come home. Xiao Yichen beamed brightly. Xianxia put down Xiao Yichen and walked over to Mu Yaja, hugging his shoulders from behind. When did you come home? Mu Yaja naturally held her arm and replied indifferently. 4 o'clock. The moment he opened his mouth, Xianxia could tell from his cold tone that he was not in a good mood. You seem to be in a bad mood? Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. There was a flash of tiredness and anger in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and smiled. No. No? From your tone, you seem to have something on your mind. Xianxia was extremely sensitive, so she could tell at once that he had a lot on his mind. Mu Yaja comforted her. Don't think too much. I'm fine. He turned around and stared at her. Where did you go? Oh, I went to the mall in the afternoon to buy some daily necessities. Purchase? What do you need to buy? Beds, blankets and so on. In the end, she was recognized midway. Luckily, Gong Jie came to her rescue. Otherwise, she would be in a sorry state. Mu Yaja was a little speechless. We have beds and blankets at home. You don't need to buy them, right? I went to buy them because I needed them. Xianxia pondered for a moment before she succinctly repeated to him what Yun Yeching had told her over the phone in the afternoon. In the end, she smiled and said, Uncle has always taken good care of our family. Now that something like this has happened, I can't take care of much, but I'll try my best to satisfy your needs. Yes. Still, you should be careful when you go out now. It'll be very dangerous if someone recognizes you. As soon as Mu Yaja finished speaking, Xianxia recalled what had happened in the afternoon. So many people had chased after her. Thinking about it, she still had lingering fears. In the future, if there's anything you need to purchase, just tell me and I'll get someone to prepare it for you. I'm worried about you going out. Xianxia felt warmth in her heart. She smiled and nodded. Okay, I got it. Mu Yaja held her in his arms and kissed her cheek in front of the two children. She nudged his shoulder and muttered in a low voice, "Hey, restrain yourself a little. The children are all here. It doesn't matter. It's good to let them practice for a while. Practice for a while." Wasn't this education a little too early? Mu Yaja asked gently. Tonight, there's no cooking at home. Let's go out to eat. What do you want to eat? I can't think of anything at the moment. Xianxia turned to look at Yu Yu. Yu Yu, what do you want to eat? I'll listen to Mommy. Mommy's boy number 1 answered. Xianxia was silent for a moment before she asked Xiaoyichen, Xiaoyichen, is there anything you like to eat? I'll listen to Mommy too. Mommy's boy number 2 stood obediently. Xiaoxia's eyes twitched. After thinking hard for a long time, she helplessly turned to look at Mu Yaja. Do you have any ideas? I'll listen to you. The number 1 wife slave looked at her gently and answered. Hey, did he have to be like this? Did he leave such a difficult problem like where to eat tonight for her to solve? After thinking about it, Yu Yu and Xiaoyichen didn't like pizza. Mu Yaja should be sick of French cuisine. Chapter 1354. That night, Mu Lianjue felt uneasy. His uncle had booked a flight to San Francisco for him the next morning. In order to ensure his safety, he specially arranged for him to stay in a safe place. The reason why it was a safe place was that his uncle had arranged for him to stay in an extremely secluded military base. Not far from where Mu Lianjue was staying was where the army was stationed. The area within a radius of 100 miles was guarded by his uncle's men, so it was relatively safe. However, Mu Lianjue was still feeling uneasy. Not to mention sleeping soundly, he could not even sit up straight in bed. His uncle had given him a very clear hint. They had been brothers for decades. Naturally, he wouldn't just sit by and watch him die. However, there was only so much he could do. After escorting him abroad, he could only find another place to settle down. He couldn't help too much. After all, once he left the country, it would be beyond his uncle's reach. However, there was one thing that his uncle had made very clear. That was, Mu Yaja would not let him off easily. He would probably take action tonight. This nephew of his was so stubborn that it gave Mu Linfeng a headache. No matter how he tried to persuade him, it was useless. Mu Yaja had already made up his mind and was not going to give him any room for negotiation. It was obvious that he wanted to kill his nephew. Everyone had a reverse scale, and they all had their own forbidden areas. Since Mu Lianjue had touched his reverse scale and trespassed on his forbidden zone, he could not be blamed for being merciful to him. Mu Yaja told his uncle, I don't care how you protect him. Since you want to protect him from me, don't blame me for not caring about our relationship. The moment he said this, his stance was laid out before him. Knowing Mu Yaja's character well, Mu Linfeng knew that he would not let this matter rest. Hence, he told his nephew that as his elder brother, he could only help him this much. The rest was up to him. Sitting on pins and needles, Mu Lianjue only felt that every minute and second was so long. His uncle settled him in a small room at the base. The space inside was very small. It was a camp, so there was only a bed, a table, and a lamp on the table. These were all the furnishings in the room. The night gradually darkened. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Startled, Mu Lianjue shot up from the bed. Who is it? Fourth Master, it's late. You should rest. It turned out that it was the sentinel at the base. Seeing that the light in the room was still on, he kindly reminded him. Mu Lianjue, who had lifted the rock up, dropped to the ground and half-heartedly said, It's none of your business. Go and guard him obediently. Understood. The sentinel's reply, and then left. The nights, outside the window. It was late at night, and the wind was getting stronger. Despite the tightly shut windows, Mu Lianjue's heart seemed to be flustered by the wind outside. He could not calm himself down. Outside the door too. Impatiently he said, I'm not sleeping. Don't disturb me. Fourth Master Mu, please open the door. The voice outside the door was incomparably respectful and polite. Infuriated, he thought that the sentinel had come to poke his nose into other people's business again. He walked over and opened the door, only to see a group of fully armed mercenaries standing at the door with cold and unfriendly faces. Chapter 1355. It was as if something had exploded in his head. After a burst of blinding white light, he was left in a daze. Fourth Master, come with us. That person's tone was icy cold, giving people a very strange feeling. It was as if he was a prison guard in ancient times who had come to bring a condemned prisoner to the execution ground. Mu Lianjue's lips trembled violently out of fear. Who are you? Where are you taking me? Fourth Master, be good and come with us. We're here on Master's orders to take you back. His heart fell into an ice cellar at that person's words. He was terrified and helpless. He didn't even need to think about it to know who this Master was. However, this was Mu Linfeng's territory. The capital's military encampment was 100-mile radius around it. As a stronghold, it was heavily guarded and impenetrable. Normally, this place was used as a secret training base for important military exercises of the country. The level of security was obvious. How did these people barge in? That person ignored him and sized up the terrified look on his face without batting an eyelid. His eyes were as cold as ice, like an emotionless machine. Fourth Master, let's not waste each other's time. If you know what's good for you, you'd better come with us obediently. Don't be so miserable at the last moment. In other words, they would use force on him if he did not stay put and follow them. The warning in his words, coupled with the cold aura on his face, was chilling. What are you trying to do? Mu Lianjue dared not move, much less go with them. He cursed inwardly. Where were the soldiers stationed here? Where did they go? What was Mu Linfeng doing? Didn't they say that this area was heavily guarded? Why did Mu Yaja's men barge in without a sound? He didn't know what would await him if he left with these people. Was it death? According to Mu Linfeng, that brat seemed to want to kill him, even going as far as to kill him. Did he really not care about their relationship as uncle and nephew? Did he really have to be so cruel as to force him into a dead end? I won't go with you. Mu Lianjue was not stupid. He knew that if he went back with them, what awaited him would be the final judgment. Would he still have a chance of survival then? Fourth Master, I'd like to remind you that you have no right to negotiate with us now. That person's face clearly showed mockery as he looked at him coldly. Whether you're willing or not, you have to come with us. As for whether you want to leave with dignity or not, it's up to you. My master told me to leave you some face, so before we take a tough stance, you have the right to maintain your dignity. This was the last bit of mercy Mu Lianjue's mercy. That was because the same blood flowed in their veins. Mu Lianjue's heart felt stifled as if it were being crushed by a heavy rock, making it hard for him to breathe. He took a few steps back and looked out of the window in a panic, but he heard the man say coldly, "Don't look. The soldiers stationed outside the house have all been taken care of." You guys. Mu Lianjue trembled with rage. What was to come, at this moment, finally come. Chapter 1356. Could it be that he really could not escape this ordeal? I can go back with you. But you have to promise me that you won't take my life. Mu Lianjue shamelessly made such a request. That person snorted coldly. His tone was filled with ridicule and contempt, as if he was mocking his naivety and ignorance. Promise your life. Don't be naive, Fourth Master Mu. You don't have the right to negotiate with us. Either you come with us with dignity, or we'll take you away by force, regardless of life or death. This person spoke without the slightest bit of mercy, not leaving any leeway for him, regardless of life or death. Mu Lianjue turned pale with fright. What did this mean? Did he have to resort to violence if he struggled even a little? He stood stubbornly at the same spot, clearly unwilling to give in. The man had completely lost his patience. He signaled to the men behind him and shouted, "There's no time. Go, take him away." "Yes, sir." A few tall and burly mercenaries immediately stepped forward and surrounded Mu Lianjue. Mu Lianjue warily swept a glance at them. His eyes widened as his face turned pale. What are you doing?" "Fourth Master Mu, sorry for the offense." As soon as that person finished speaking, a few people beside him immediately stepped forward, one on the left and one on the right, one in front and one behind, sandwiched him. One person held up one side of his body, and in a few moves, his hands were tied behind his back and handcuffed. The man rudely reached out and grabbed him by the collar. "Fourth Master, Our time is limited. Since you're not cooperating, don't blame us for being merciless. Mu Lianjue struggled a little. Let go of me. Be more polite. I'm the fourth master of the Mu family after all. What is the meaning of this? Don't be rash in front of us. Fourth Master Mu, you're really interesting. I don't care if you're the fourth master or the second master. There's no room for negotiation. Take him away. With that, the man waved his hand, and 2 mercenaries, one on each side of the man, carried him away with a few armed mercenaries protecting him from the front and back. When he left the base, Mu Lianjue glanced around and was shocked to see that all the patrolling soldiers and sentinels were lying on the ground. He did not know if they were dead or alive. There were no signs of an intense struggle at the scene. It was obvious that they were all taken down in one move. Before Mu Lianjue could take a few more looks, his eyes and mouth were blindfolded and he was pushed into an armed escort vehicle. He was caught off guard. Darkness enveloped his vision. He was unceremoniously pushed and fell onto the cold seat. His face was pressed against the cold and hard surface of the car and he almost broke his teeth. He suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Thinking back to what he had seen from the base, it was as if a bottomless pit had opened up in his heart, and he fell into endless despair. Just how capable was Mu Yaja to be able to take his woman away from Mu Linfeng's clutches? This was a military base, a strategic stronghold, and an extremely well-guarded drill ground. Usually it was a secret base that few people knew about. Hence, the defense was extremely strict. The capital's military was heavily guarded within a 100-mile radius. Chapter 1357. Even the important figures in the central government had to give him some face, not to mention the high-ranking officials in the government. When they saw him, they had to bow their heads and bow to him. Mu Yaja actually had the ability to take someone away right under Mu Linfeng's nose. Mu Lianjue shuddered at the thought of it. It seemed that he had underestimated this nephew of his. Since when did he have such great power? It must be said that Mu Linfeng and Mu Lianjue were indeed a little naive. If Mu Yaja wanted someone, how could Mu Linfeng's subordinate stop him? Mu Lianjue got into the car, but he did not know where the car was taking him. Was it hell? Or? He did not dare to think too deeply about it. He only hoped that Mu Yaja would leave him some face and not be ruthless in everything. Did Mu Linfeng know that Mu Yaja had taken that person away? If he knew, would he rush over to save him? At this moment, in the hospital, Mu Shang was lying on the bed, leaning weakly against the headboard. Wearing an oxygen mask, his bleary eyes were half opened with great difficulty. Like withered grass by the yellow spring, he was on the brink of death. Mu Yaja and Mu Linfeng sat facing each other on the left and right of the bed. They were in a silent confrontation. Mu Yaja's posture was leisurely and elegant. His eyes were indifferently looking out the window as if he was quietly waiting for a certain result. Mu Linfeng looked at him silently, sizing him up from time to time. Similarly, he was also silent as he waited for news from his subordinates. He only felt that the man sitting in front of him had too many unfathomable things about him. Grandpa Mu, on the other hand, was quietly sizing them up. His condition had worsened and he could no longer speak. The three of them formed a very strange scene. The air in the spacious ward was tense and stifling. Especially when Mu Yaja sat in the ward, his cold and imposing aura made one breathless. After a long period of dead silence, as if a century had passed, a ringtone broke the silence. Mu Linfeng was shocked. With a swoosh, he looked at Mu Yaja warily. Mu Yaja picked up his phone and dialed a number. On the other end, a subordinate reported in a low voice, "Boss, the person is already in our hands." It was very quiet in the ward, so Mu Linfeng could hear the voice from the phone clearly. Mu Linfeng turned pale with fright and stood up agitatedly. Mu Yaja glanced at him coldly, then said into the phone, "Watch him, I'll be right there." "Yes, boss." Mu Yaja hung up the call and looked up, only to see his uncle's extremely ugly expression. It was frighteningly dark. He smiled leisurely and elegantly asked, "What's wrong, second uncle?" "You have him." Mu Linfeng was so angry that his lips trembled. He really wanted to know how his nephew managed to take someone away from the heavily guarded and heavily surrounded military base. "Second uncle, your hearing has always been good. You should have heard it just now." Mu Yaja smiled devilishly. There was a hint of arrogance and cynicism in his smile, But more than that, there was a hint of arrogance and brashness that he had never shown in front of his second uncle. Chapter 1358. All this while, Mu Yaja had always been reserved and calm in front of him. As a junior, he had a good grasp of his bearing, keeping his sharpness and arrogance to be humble and docile. Now, however, he no longer concealed himself and fully displayed the sharpness of a ruler. For a moment, Mu Linfeng actually felt that the domineering aura emanating from him was too dazzling. Must you be so heartless and ruthless? Was there no room for negotiation at all? Mu Linfeng looked at him bitterly, still trying to persuade him to stay. Mu Yaja glanced at his uncle's gloomy face and sneered, too lazy to bother with him. Yaja, you're too scary. Mu Linfeng shook his head in disappointment. I never thought that you were such a heartless person. How could you be so cruel to this extent? He's your fourth uncle. We share the same roots and are connected by blood. How can you not care about our relationship? He started to fear Mu Yaja in his heart. Today, he could get rid of him with his own hands. Then what about tomorrow? Would they use the same method to kill him? Since ancient times, the rich and powerful would kill their brothers and fathers for power. There were countless cases of brothers killing each other. Mu Linfeng began to suspect if Mu Yaja had such treacherous ambitions. Second Mu, don't flaunt your seniority and think too highly of yourself. I used to respect you as an elder, but don't use your status to oppress others and change the concept. Second Mu. Mu Linfeng was infuriated by his short form of address. How dare he call him Second Mu? After Mu Lianqing's death, no one in the Mu family had the seniority to call him Second Mu, except for Mu Shang. This Mu Yaja clearly did not care about him at all. He was not giving him any face at all. Mu Yaja said coldly, so second uncle, you also know about the concept of sharing the same roots and being connected by blood. I thought you've completely forgotten about it. What do you mean by that? Mu Linfeng glared at him fiercely. Mu Yaja said sternly, Fourth Mu is the one who killed his brothers and his father. For the sake of seizing power, he's willing to do such treacherous things. Hee. With him as an example, I'm just imitating him. What's wrong with that? Mu Linfeng was suddenly at a loss for words. What? You're not saying anything. Didn't you want to defend him? I'll give you this chance. Today, I'll settle old and new scores with him. My father's death, my mother's death, Mu Qingqing's death, his instigation of Mu Wanru to poison Grandpa's medicine, and his assassination of my son. If I don't settle these scores with him, who else will I settle them with? Mu Yaja suddenly raised his eyes and swept them over with a piercing glare. Is it you? Second Mu. Mu Linfeng was forced to take 2 steps back by his chilly tone and fell into a chair. I've given you a chance. I've said before that it's your business to protect him. If you can't, you can only blame yourself for not being capable enough. Hee. Mu Linfeng was speechless. He could only shake his head and sigh. It seems that I'm really getting old. You're amazing. Chapter 1359. He cast a sidelong glance at him from the corner of his eye. His gaze was cold and threatening with a deep sense of disgust. Let bygones be bygones. Now that things had come to this, he had already let go of the grudges of the previous generation. Of all things, Mu Lianjue should never have touched his reverse scale. He should not have touched Yun Shirshir, let alone Mu Yichen and Yun Tianyu. They were forbidden grounds that he could not touch. He thought of how Yun Shirshir and Xiao Yichen were tortured by him until they were covered in wounds. Then, he thought of how Yu Yu was almost separated from him forever by the assassin he had sent. Mu Yaja wished he could tear him into pieces, but even that would not be enough to appease his anger. Second Mu, you're being unfair. In your eyes, Fourth Mu is a brother and a brother. As for me, I'm just a pawn in your hands. That's why you can protect your brother and brother, but you don't need to care about a pawn's feelings. That's because a pawn only needs to listen to orders and doesn't need any extra feelings. Mu Yaja turned around and looked at him deeply. That's why, even if I'm in pain and despair, I shouldn't have fallen into your eyes. I don't want to be your pawn anymore. I have my feelings too. Fourth Mu has offended something he shouldn't have, so he naturally has to pay the price. Isn't that so? Mu Linfeng was stunned. Her embarrassment and anger, which had been exposed by the man, quickly surfaced on her face. Mu Linfeng's expression changed drastically. His hawk-like eyes brewed a terrifying storm as he bellowed, "Shut up!" Hee hee. Mu Yaja's lips curved into a half-smile expressionlessly. "Did I say something wrong? Haven't I always been a pawn in your eyes? There's no need to care about your feelings. Second Mu, I've already done my best at this point. In the future, if you want me to show you some respect, don't push me too far." "Bastard! You disgraceful thing, shut your mouth." Mu Linfeng had completely lost control. Raising the cane in his hand, he swung it at Mu Linfeng's shoulder viciously. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Mu Yaja didn't even try to dodge. The cane hit him on the shoulder and broke him in two. The remains of the cane flew out and smashed into the window, shattering it into pieces. Pa! Soon, the window was broken into pieces. Mu Linfeng's shoulders shuddered from the commotion. It was only when he calmed down that he realized what he had done. He actually used the mahogany cane in his hand to hit Mu Yaja on the shoulder. When the old man on the bed saw this scene, he was unable to say anything. He could only close his eyes in exhaustion and disappointment. Aside from feeling regret, he felt even more pity. The sorrow of a wealthy family was once again vividly displayed before his eyes. Mu Yaja stood in front of Mu Linfeng expressionlessly. He didn't seem to be in pain at all, as if the cane didn't hit him. However, the coldness in his eyes was like the thick snow in winter. "I owe you for this strike. Now that things have come to this, it's time to repay your kindness." With that, he smiled coldly and turned to leave. Mu Linfeng watched him leave and slumped on the chair. Chapter 1360. The car sped along the road. It came to an abrupt halt when it reached the highway junction. Mu Lianjue nervously looked left and right, his heart in his throat. The road in front of the car was blocked by a mysterious troop. In front of them was an extended Bentley. Behind the Bentley were 5 armored vehicles. 3 rows of fully armed mercenaries formed a line, tightly blocking the road and completely blocking the way. Yun Tianyu sat elegantly in the back seat of the Bentley with a glass of bubbling cola in his hand. Like a gentleman, he gently sucked on the straw and took a sip. Beside him, Vermilion Bird lowered her body and whispered in his ear, "The car has been stopped. Check if it's Mu Lianjue himself in the car." He ordered coldly. Yes. Yu had already made preparations beforehand. He knew that Mu Lianjue would be escorted out of the country to San Francisco tomorrow morning, so he decided to detain him tonight. However, by the time his men arrived, Mu Lianjue had already been taken away. The scene was littered with wreckage. The soldiers in the station were all taken down in one move. They were not dead and were still breathing, but judging from their injuries, the kidnappers were well trained and skilled. They seemed to be the work of mercenaries. Yu immediately blocked all traffic and set up a strict guard at every intersection when he learned that Mu Lianjue had been kidnapped. What he did not know, however, was that it was Mu Yaja who had snatched his brother away. Sometimes, blood was a magical thing. It was unknown if the father and son had a tacit understanding, but they actually thought of the same thing. After the car was stopped, Deputy Zhou, Mu Yaja's subordinate, got out of the car. He could not help frowning at the scene before him. Just as he was in a daze, he saw a tall and handsome woman alight from the Bentley not far away. She had a head of neat blonde hair that was shaved to her ears. She wore a military vest that revealed her curvaceous figure. However, a cold and solemn murderous aura emanated from her body. It was like an invisible arrow shooting towards him. She took a few steps forward and the first thing she said was, "Who is the person in the car?" Vice Captain Zhou furrowed his brows. His expression was displeased, and he became vigilant. "Who are you? Cut the crap. The people in the car stay. All of you leave." The Vermilion Bird spoke. Her words contained a warning. Vice Captain Zhou's eyebrows furrowed even deeper. It was obvious that they wanted to snatch the person from his hands. This was really interesting. "Who are you?" "The people in the car were ordered to be taken away by our boss. We can't leave them behind. I'm sorry, but I can't comply." "Long-winded," the Vermilion Bird coldly rebuked. "Hand her over." Vice Captain Zhou frowned, but from the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the armband on Vermilion Bird's arm. On the armband was the emblem of Mercenary Paradise. In an instant, he was stunned. Mercenary Paradise. That was one of the top mercenary organizations in the world. They were actually from Mercenary Paradise. Vice Captain Zhou froze for a moment, then swept his eyes over the crowd. He saw that the other side had more than a dozen men and horses. Their battle array was vast, and their aura was intimidating. Mercenary Paradise was known as the top demonic force. Mercenaries from Mercenary Paradise were invincible. If they really wanted to fight, the situation would be one-sided. D*Mnet. Chapter 1361. Deputy Zhou was well aware that the mercenaries from Mercenary Paradise were formidable. Moreover, the other party had more than a dozen people. If they were to confront them head-on, it would be a strenuous and unrewarding task. Thus, he immediately signaled his men with his eyes to send a signal to the headquarters to send back the coordinates. On the other end, Vermilion Bird quickly caught sight of this small movement from the corner of her eye. She immediately took out her gun, nimbly loaded it, and swiftly fired. The bullet whizzed through the air and hit the wireless communicator in the man's hand with a loud bang. With unerring accuracy, it shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. The man was startled when the bullet scratched his palm, leaving a horrifying bloody mark. He raised his head in anger, only to see Vermilion Bird coldly putting away her gun with a disdainful smirk on her thin lips. Deputy Zhou flew into a rage out of humiliation. "What are you trying to do? Hand him over and leave." Vermilion Bird indifferently spat out these words. She stood tall in the cold wind, looking valiant. Her long straight legs were strong and relaxed, and her cold eyes were like a wild cat in the forest, sparkling. Mu Lianjue, who was locked up in the car, did not know what was happening outside when he noticed that the car had stopped moving for a long time. He struggled to sit up and with great effort, inched toward the car window. Arching his back, he used the friction of the car seat to remove the black cloth covering his eyes bit by bit. When he saw the scene outside through the window, his eyes widened in shock. Clearly, he was shocked by the scene before him. The two sides faced each other with swords drawn and soon fell into a stalemate. No one dared to act rashly. Both sides were mercenaries from top forces. Even if there was a gap in strength, it was not to the extent that it was too big. If they were to fight head-on, the gains would not make up for the losses. Deputy Zhou, who was also from the elite, had rich experience and been through hundreds of battles. He knew that biding his time and retreating in order to advance was the best way to do things. Although the wireless communicator was damaged, the signal was still sent out quickly. Mu Yaja was on his way to the scene when he received the signal. He could not help but frown when he learned that a mysterious team had appeared at the highway intersection and completely blocked off all escape routes. It seemed that they were going to kidnap someone. A mysterious team. Mu Yaja was surprised. The information he received was limited, so he did not send many people. However, all of them were elite soldiers from the world's top mercenary group. They were one of the troops that he had groomed, and their strength was not shallow. However, from the signal sent by Vice Captain Zhou's subordinate, it seemed that they had encountered some crisis. Mu Yaja was surprised. At the same time, he dispatched people as fast as he could. He even got a special car and rushed to the destination. Obviously, he did not know who had created this mysterious troop. Yun Tianyu had obviously underestimated Mu Yaja's ability. He thought that Mu Yaja was unaware of this matter. The news of Mu Lianjue's flight to San Francisco the next day was confidential information that he had obtained by hacking into his uncle's email. Mu Linfeng was clearly trying to cover for Mu Lianjue to leave the country. Naturally, Yu would not let Mu Lianjue go. One must know that once Mu Lianjue left the country, it would not be so easy to control him. There was no way he would let him go. Chapter 1362. Speaking of which, according to seniority, he seemed to be addressing Mu Lianjue as his fourth granduncle. He had to admit that his fourth granduncle's ruthlessness was an eye-opener for him. Killing one's brother and father was a cruel act that only happened in the royal family in ancient times, yet it happened right before his eyes. He would never let it go. However, the father-son pair had apparently overlooked a more important person. Mu Linfeng. When Mu Linfeng learned that Mu Yaja's men had abducted someone from the military base, he flew into a rage and quickly sent out a group of soldiers to chase after them. After leaving the hospital, he took a private car to the military base. According to the report from his subordinates, the base had been purged. The so-called purge meant that all the soldiers stationed at the base had been taken down. Fortunately, Mu Yaja had specifically instructed them to show mercy, so they did not deal too heavy a blow and did not cause too many casualties. Soon, news came from the front line that several armed escort vehicles had been stopped by an equally mysterious force at the southern entrance of the Jingbei Expressway. The two sides were in a standoff, and the situation was in a stalemate. He immediately felt that something was amiss, so he immediately mobilized the local police force and made a call to the capital's military headquarters to dispatch another group of men to the southern entrance of the Jingbei Expressway. At the same time, Mu Yaja was also rushing to the destination. He was quite far away, so it would take him half an hour to reach the destination even if he hurried. On the way, Lu Jinyu gave him a call to inform him of this matter. Chief, Mu Linfeng has dispatched a group of men to the expressway. Mu Yaja quickly took this matter seriously. At first, he suspected that the mysterious troop that had blocked the convoy at the highway junction might be from Mu Linfeng's forces. However, when Lu Jinyu told him that Mu Linfeng had mobilized manpower from the military and rushed over, his heart skipped a beat. What was the origin of that mysterious force, then? Hence, he stepped on the accelerator and drove the car to the highest speed. He could not allow Mu Lianjue to leave the country under his watch. The car sped along the way, breaking countless rules and running countless red lights. However, his car had a military license plate, so even if the traffic police saw it, they would not chase after him. After all, the military had special privileges in certain aspects. It was important to note that the local police system and the military were separated, each doing their own thing. However, if the military carried out any special operations, the local police force and various forces would have to listen to the military's orders. This was the supreme privilege of the military. This was also the reason why Mu Linfeng had been in politics for many years instead of being in business, and had a prominent and stable position in the Mu family. If one were to ask who held the most prominent position in the family, it would be none other than Mu Linfeng. This was the reason why Mu Yaja had always been so respectful to him. As a bigwig with a military background, Mu's eyes. Even when Grandpa Mu was still the head of the family, his position in the Mu family was only second to one and above everyone else. Chapter 1363. Thus, when Mu Yaja openly rebelled against him, Mu Linfeng found it unbelievable and even flew into a rage out of humiliation. Inwardly, however, he thought that the brat had lost his mind to openly rebel against him for a wild woman. At the same time, the manpower from the special forces quickly gathered at the highway intersection. They were all fully armed and had excellent ammunition. Mu Linfeng ordered that no matter what, they had to bring the person back alive. No matter who the other party was, they had to pay a price if necessary. Upon receiving this order, these mercenaries carried sufficient ammunition and guns and rushed over with the determination to exchange fire. Yu clearly did not know about Mu Linfeng's handiwork or that the latter had once again mobilized military forces from the mercenary groups. He remained in the car calmly and called Gong Jie. When Gong Jie found out that the men he had sent were in a deadlock with the other party, he sent more men and rushed over. The three parties were on their way to the same destination. On the surface, the suburbs of the capital looked calm and peaceful, but the game in the dark was already in an abyss of suffering and surging winds and clouds. Seeing that the other party was unwilling to hand over the person, Vermilion Bird no longer showed mercy. Expressionlessly, she turned around and took out her radio communicator, saying coldly, "They're not willing to hand over the person. Prepare to fire." Vice Captain Zhou was shocked. Could it be that the other party had more than a dozen people and there was an ambush in the dark? For a moment, he looked around vigilantly, jittery at the slightest sound. Now that they were outnumbered, it was inevitable that they would be isolated and without help. However, just as Vermilion Bird's troops were about to fire, Mu Linfeng's men arrived. Vermilion Bird suddenly caught the sound of police sirens not far away. Instantly alert, she took out a pair of binoculars from her waist and agilely climbed onto the roof of the car to observe the distance. A few hundred meters away, she was shocked to see more than a dozen military vehicles, with dozens of police cars clearing the way, speeding over from the south entrance. From afar, red and blue lights flashed continuously. The scene of dozens of vehicles driving over was truly spectacular. Yu turned around. At the same time, he keenly heard the sirens from afar and became alert. "Vermilion Bird, what's the situation?" "There seems to be a situation." Vermilion Bird jumped down from the roof of the car and reported to him, "There are more than a dozen military vehicles coming here. I suspect that they are from the special group." Mu Linfeng. This was the only possibility that Yu could think of. I suspect it's him. After all, other than Mu Linfeng, no one else in the entire capital had the authority to deploy so many people from a special-grade corporation. While Zhu Ke and Yu were reporting to each other, the military vehicles quickly arrived and completely sealed off the South Pass Road. They surrounded Zhu Ke and Vice Captain Zhou's troops. Then, a few mercenaries with guns in their hands walked down from several military vehicles. These mercenaries were different from the soldiers stationed at the station just now. Between their iron-like faces, there was a cold-blooded valiance unique to the country's machinery. Tisk! Yu suddenly frowned and smacked her lips. Vermilion Bird said in a deep voice, "Don't be afraid, President Yun. I'm here." "No," Yu said calmly. "Then, I think I drank too much Coke. The roots of my teeth are a little sore," Yu said faintly. Zhu Ke was instantly speechless and broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 1364. She thought that the little guy was scared and nervous, so she did not expect him to say such a ridiculous thing. Suddenly, Yu uttered a wise saying in a serious tone, "Kids should drink less cola." With that, he put the cola aside. His tone was as mature as a veteran. Vermilion Bird. This squishy dumpling could still say such dry humor at such a critical juncture. That was enough. Yu rolled down the car window and scanned the scene outside. His face regained its usual coldness as he reminded, "Vermilion Bird, you don't have to send us off if it's not necessary. Let's see what's going on." "Yes, I understand." Vermilion Bird nodded and obeyed. The troops dispatched by Mu Linfeng quickly sealed off the road and surrounded the scene. They took full control of the situation and took control of the situation. What Yu did not expect, however, was that Mu Linfeng would show up at the scene in person. According to his original plan, he would arrange for Mu Lianjue to stay at the base and get him to the airport at dawn so that he could board a flight to San Francisco. Just as he had expected, Mu Yaja had indeed made a move. What he did not expect, though, was that the man's men were so capable. With just a group of a dozen or so people, they easily dealt with the soldiers stationed at the base and escaped with their captives. Mu Linfeng felt extremely humiliated. The soldiers guarding the base were all elite troops and were awe-inspiring. How could he not be angry when they were trampled on by a small group of mercenaries? Hence, he had specially selected the elites from the special forces this time. Each of them was tall, strong, well-trained, and outstanding. Once the car stopped and he gained full control, he alighted from it under the protection of the soldiers. Once he got out of the car, he put on airs and scanned the surroundings. His face darkened. Someone immediately came forward to report after observing his expression. "Sir, the scene is under control. We're at your command." "Where is he?" "He's in the car." His subordinate stood straight at the side and pointed at the armed escort vehicle parked not far away. Yu sneered inwardly when he saw the man through the window. This second granduncle of his was quite powerful. Could it be that people with a bit of a special background all had this kind of character? Before doing anything, they would put on airs for others to see. He did have a bit of an air about him. Seeing that the scene was under control, Deputy Zhou's men did not dare to act rashly. It was not because of anything other than the fact that they would not gain anything if they went head-on. Previously, Mu Yaja had given the order to bring Mu Lianjue back. He wanted to see him, dead or alive. As mercenaries, their employer's orders were absolute and could not be disobeyed. Therefore, they treated this order like an imperial edict. However, the current situation was somewhat outside of the plan. Therefore, Deputy Zhou and the rest kept their cool and stayed in their original positions. Before Mu Yaja's reinforcements arrived, they would remain sober and not act rashly. Mu Linfeng sent someone to check Deputy Zhou's car and bring Mu Lianjue out. Deputy Zhou gnashed his teeth in hatred at the arrogant and despotic manner of his men. Chapter 1365. Mu Linfeng suddenly noticed the elongated Bentley parked at the side. Puzzled, he took a look at the license plate, which started with capital AG6, and was stunned. Capital AG6 license plates were rarely issued. Most of them were issued by the central government to international political figures or people under special protection. Cars with this license plate could pass unimpeded no matter where they went. Even if it was a central non-high, they could drive straight in without stopping. This meant that they had supreme authority. In the capital, the level of authority was a symbol of status. Thus, a simple license plate could reflect a lot of things. Mu Linfeng was astonished to find out who was sitting in the Bentley. His subconscious reaction was to check the authenticity of the license plate. This was because even with his qualifications, it was impossible for him to obtain such a high-level license plate. The car Yu was in was issued by the central government to Xianxia. Xianxia had come to the capital this time to meet some mysterious leaders and negotiate some special deals. Xianxia was born in the arms industry and maintained close ties with various countries' political figures. A person like him would be specially received by any country's leader. Thus, every time he came, the central government would receive him with high standards and make special arrangements for him. Mu Linfeng was suspicious, so he led his men forward to see who was sitting in the car. Alas, the vermilion bird raised a hand to stop him the moment he stepped forward and held his outstretched hand tightly. Hiss! Vermilion bird's strength was too terrifying. Even Mu Linfeng could not take it and frowned in pain. Mu Linfeng's expression changed, and the atmosphere became even more tense. Seeing that someone dared to act rashly in front of Mu Linfeng, the people beside him shouted, "How dare you? Who are you? How dare you act rashly here? Take your hand away." Vermilion Bird looked up coldly and did not move at all. Her handsome face was extremely cold. She only had one master and only listened to Yu's orders. She did not need to listen to anyone else. Vermilion Bird did not let go. Instead, she used even more strength and strength. Unable to bear her pain, Mu Linfeng frowned in pain. However, due to his status, he had no choice but to maintain his dignified posture. His sharp, eagle-like eyes shot a warning at the Vermilion Bird. The adjutant standing beside him immediately went forward and shouted, "I told you to let go. Don't be rash, didn't you hear me? Let go." With that, he tried to break free from Vermilion Bird's grip. Unexpectedly, Vermilion Bird easily caught his hand and twisted it. With a crack, his wrist was broken. The man groaned and endured the pain, and broke out in cold sweat. At this moment of confrontation, the window of the Bentley suddenly rolled down. "Vermilion Bird, let go. Don't hurt the relationship between me and second uncle." His voice was childish, but it was steady. Surprised, Mu Linfeng looked into the car and saw Yu sitting in the back seat expressionlessly. If it were not for his youthful appearance, one would not be able to tell that he was a 7-year-old child. However, when Mu Linfeng saw his delicate face, the latter turned pale with fright. Ichen. Chapter 1366. Yu coldly opened his eyes. A frosty glint flashed across his eyes, and at the same time, his pink lips curled into a cold smirk. "Second granduncle, it's our first time meeting. Nice to meet you." The moment he opened his mouth, Mu Linfeng quickly realized his identity. He was probably the other son that Xianxia gave birth to when she was a surrogate mother for Mu Yaja. Just based on his appearance alone, he was very similar to Xiao Yichen. However, the difference was that his extraordinary bearing and gestures were somewhat similar to Mu Yaja's. He had an aura that was different from other children of his age. He was noble, cold, and elegant. His black and white eyes were distinct, and his eyelashes were thick. His adorable face was even more intimidating because of his cold expression. Mu Linfeng suddenly snorted. "Humph. So it's Yaja's little b****** RD outside. What are you doing here?" When Yu heard that, he laughed instead of getting angry. He snorted a few times, but he could not be bothered with the derogatory term. He did not get out of the car and just sat there elegantly, looking at him calmly. Mu Linfeng, on the other hand, was enraged by his arrogance. While he was furious, he was also shocked. He did not expect that a 7-year-old child would have such an extraordinary bearing. At the same time, when he realized what this child had just called him, he coldly said, "Little b***** RD. Take back the way you called me just now." Mu Linfeng ordered. Yu turned to look at him disapprovingly with a raised brow. Mu Linfeng scornfully said, "Why don't you take a look at your status? You don't have the right to call me second granduncle." When Yu heard that, he was silent for a moment before he calmly asked, "Right? What do you mean by right?" "Humph. What do you think? Don't think that just because you're Yaja's son, you can climb up the Mu family's social ladder. That mother of yours has the ambition of a wolf. She secretly hid the Mu family's heir and even wanted to rely on her son to climb up the Mu family's social ladder. Tell her that this is just a dream. Don't even think about it. The arrogant and disdainful words resounded in his ears like thunder. The disdain in his words was obvious. Clearly, Mu Linfeng rejected the child from the bottom of his heart. Don't think that just because you're a child of the Mu family and have the blood of the Mu family flowing in your veins, you can openly step into the Mu family's doorstep. You don't have the qualifications. Mu Linfeng's voice was cold to the extreme. Yu found it funny. She couldn't help but smile. Her pink lips curled into a disdainful smile. Her eyes were cold. I don't know how high the Mu family's branch is. However, I've seen how thick-skinned second granduncle is. Haha. What did you say? Mu Linfeng was furious. What do you mean? I meant it literally. Why? Second granduncle is so knowledgeable, but you can't even understand basic human language? Yu's words were like pearls, and the ridicule in her tone was equally unrestrained. You, Mu Linfeng scolded. B****RD. I'm here. You don't have the right to act rashly. Chapter 1367. These words completely enraged Mu Linfeng, to the extent that he could not restrain his anger in front of so many people. He lost his poise and scolded, "Little bastard." Mu Linfeng was infuriated because he detested Yu. If not for Yu's appearance, perhaps his plan would not have been completely disrupted. His appearance was the biggest failure of this plan. If not for him, he would not have been in such a passive position. Yu smiled elegantly when he heard this. It was as if he was not angered by Mu Linfeng's ungentlemanly insult. He only said meaningfully, "I finally understand what that saying means." Mu Linfeng glanced at him coldly from the corner of his eye. However, Yu continued unhurriedly, "I've been working so hard to stay away from idiots like you." Then, the little lad glanced at him expressionlessly from the corner of his eyes, as if he was implying that Mu Linfeng was the person he was referring to. He rarely swore, but since Mu Linfeng had humiliated him, why couldn't he humiliate him back? After being insulted again and again, it wasn't his style if he didn't show them some face. Mu Linfeng's face darkened as soon as he said that. Even a ghost could tell that this brat was trying to humiliate someone with his words. How dare you? Mu Linfeng's lips twitched in anger. He glared fiercely at him, trying to intimidate this 7-year-old boy with his authority. If you dare to be rash again, I'll do you right here and now. Really? Second granduncle, do you have that much authority? Yu's pink lips curled into a gentlemanly smile. What are you going to do about me? Haha. Let's wait and see. Haha. I'll do you for the sake of the Mu family, you vile spawn. The Mu family won't allow a vile spawn like you to sully our dignity. As Mu Linfeng spoke, he waved his hand. The adjutant beside him whipped out a gun from his waist and raised his wrist. The black muzzle was instantly aimed between Yu's brows. Yu sat calmly in the car, neither shocked nor angry. Even when the cold muzzle was aimed at her forehead, she did not lose her composure. Her calm demeanor shocked Mu Linfeng even more. This child at such a young age had an extraordinary spirit. Vermilion Bird looked up and saw the adjutant taking out his gun. In the next second, she raised her Desert Eagle and aimed it at Mu Linfeng's forehead. The moment she raised her hand, all the soldiers around her raised their guns and aimed at her. They were on high alert. If Vermilion Bird made the slightest movement, they would be ready to shoot at any time. Protect the chief, the adjutant shouted. The order had already been issued, and all the soldiers were on full alert. Second granduncle, don't blame me for not reminding you of something. Yu sat in the car with his eyes lowered. At this moment, the surroundings were quiet, so his tender voice sounded especially clear and powerful. If you touch a strand of my hair, you'll be shot into a hornet's nest in the next second. After saying that coldly, Yu pursed her pink lips and smiled elegantly. She narrowed her eyes and smiled innocently and adorably. Do you want to try? In her seemingly innocent smile, her eyes were as clear as a fawn's, but there were too many things that made people's hearts palpitate.